CNET ready? Excellent. Good evening and welcome. I will call to order this January 20th, 2022 regular meeting of the College Township Council. This time, if you would join council in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to this warm winter night. First item, public open discussion. Do we have anybody joining us in person or remote? Jen, are you okay remote yet?
Yep.
Okay, great. Excellent. Again, do we have anybody joining us in person or remotely that has anything to discuss with council that is not on this evening's agenda? I am not seeing or hearing any items, so we will continue on. We'll leave that open, available, should someone need something. Are there any additions to this evening's agenda? A new item is to be added to this evening's agenda. Council? No? Any member of the audience? Very good. Our first action item, potential action item for this evening is P1, Millbrook Marsh Nature Center Land Development Plan.
Good evening. Jeff Baldwin with Spell Schaefer Engineering. Here on behalf of the Center Regions Park and Rec, to open back up for, I guess, the discussion that we had at the last meeting was tabled on some of the sidewalk requirements and the alignment and whatnot. So wanted to get in front of council again this evening, show everyone the proposed, I'll call it an alternative, I guess, based on taking council's recommendations and discussion from last meeting, also meeting with Center Regions Park and providing you with an update on where we're at for the alignment and hopefully entertain any questions if there are any, and be able to get conditional approval this evening. So this is the updated site plan. I think for the most part everybody here is aware of the project. It's building the Phase 2 educational building at the Millbrook Marsh Center. The majority of the discussion at the last meeting was the alternative sidewalk option that was originally planned to utilize the internal trail network to basically link the property to the existing trail network to the north and extend that through to the southern property at the parcel. So what is being proposed now is including a sidewalk that would be 5 feet wide from the, we call it the southern terminus of the property. It's about 20 feet shy of the property boundary to the south. Continuing adjacent to Puddintown Road, up across the access road into the current parking area, up past the staff entrance driveway, their parking area, to where it will eventually turn to avoid the curve at Puddintown Road, come in behind the educational building, and tie into the existing trail network at this location here. So we would be 5 feet asphalt bituminous pavement from here the whole way down to the south. Where it turns and connects to the existing trail network, this would be an 8-foot asphalt bituminous surface across the pedestrian bridge and linking with the existing bituminous trail network at the top. We think the major concern that Center Regions Parks had was trying to avoid this area here and continuing alongside Puddintown Road for the entire distance. Wanted to utilize the existing pedestrian walkway that was already in place in this area here and then be able to tie in at the northern and southern end of the parcel. Also taking into consideration the concerns that council had with the 5 foot minimum sidewalk and the hard surface treatment on the sidewalk itself. This area here, with it being the 8-foot, is still classified as a dual-use trail, but this 5-foot section from here the whole way down to the south would just be the 5-foot sidewalk to meet the ordinance for College Township. The area the whole way down alongside that is adjacent to Puddintown Road is expandable if it needs to be widened later on for whatever reason. There is, the grading and whatnot is sufficient enough that it is expandable to be widened if needed. I believe that's, oh, you can scroll down one last thing. All the original proposed trail improvements are no longer needed, with the exception of this area that's going to be into the Welcome Pavilion itself. There was originally a piece that would extend this down around. That's no longer needed with the updated to the sidewalk. So all those, I'll call them internal trail upgrades are no longer part of the plan, with the exception, like I said, this area immediately leading into the Welcome Pavilion. Those, for the most part, are the complete changes to the plan as compared to what was presented at the meeting in December. If there's any questions or further discussion, we can certainly entertain that now. I'm hoping that, going back and forth with Senator Marks on, a possible alternative, we looked at a couple, but we felt that this option, staying as close to Puddintown Road as long as we could, would address council's concerns as well as some of the residences that we heard in the area, and also stay away from the area of the, I think most people have the safety concern with being close to the curb along Puddintown Road, so we wanted to try to maximize this distance here and still be able to bend in and tie into that existing network as best we can.
Could you maybe just take a moment and explain how this is going to curve in the back of the newly constructed education center? Talk a little bit about that, and there's a bit of a jog there as well. Could you maybe describe some of that?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do was, as we were coming up along Puddintown Road and tying into the backside into their existing network, we wanted to, I'll say, soften this curve. We didn't want to have a hard 90 and introduce somewhat of a big block crossing. So we wanted to have this as a sweeping curve in behind the facility and utilize this space in behind here to tie into the existing trail. There is a little bit of this is a 90-degree tie-in point here at the intersection, but there is this little bit of a switchback here. So we talked about having some additional signing, just notifying, any pedestrians or bikers that may be coming down at this point, about making this turn and coming around the rain garden and sweeping this curve around to get onto the sidewalk itself. I believe there is some grading that will take place in this curve as well. There's not a large elevation change in there, but there is going to be some grading. So all the cross slopes for the sidewalk itself, as well as the grades on the longitudinal portion of the sidewalk, all meets criteria for ADA compliance. So there is no concern even with this slight grade change from roughly in this area here down to the end of this curve is all within the tolerance and the standards for sidewalk design.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Kathy or Pam, anything that you'd like to add at this time? Pam's online, Kathy's with us in the room. Anything you'd like to add? Okay, very good. Staff, anything?
Other than to say we are really happy with this alignment. This is was not talked about at either meeting, but this is definitely the best alignment option possible. I think it's a great alternative to what we were looking at before.
Great. Ed, I'm assuming PC has not seen this, but would...
Don went over it with us at our meeting on Tuesday, and the planning commission is fully behind John's recommendation.
Okay, very good. Council, having heard from the developer, the owner, staff, and planning commission, Carla, comments?
Oh, I couldn't be happier. This is just what I was trying to explain from my poorly stated words far away from the map. So this is awesome. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, nothing.
Good. Eric?
I think where we left off at the last meeting was there was concerns or suggestions in 3 different areas. One was the alignment, which you seem to have reached a really good compromise between what we started and what we heard at the meeting was best. The second issue was the surface. There was concerns, myself included, that the surface would not lend itself to year-round maintenance. I think you said the 5-foot sidewalk is going to be asphalt?
It's all asphalt. Yeah, the 5-foot section and the 8-foot section both will be blacktop asphalt.
Okay. Then the piece within the center that links to the bike path, is that still going to be that super compacted gravel?
No, from this point north to here will, other than the pedestrian bridge, will also be asphalt blacktop.
Okay, so we've resolved the concerns over challenges associated with winter maintenance.
Correct.
So then the last thing that I heard at the meeting was issues around the width. Now, help me out here. Upstream of this, from Puddintown Road back to Scenery Park, back to,
So
yeah,
Spring Creek Park?
this through here is 8 feet.
yeah, I knew that. That was more, it was a rhetorical question. Sorry. From the,
Rhetorical oracle.
yes. So my only discomfort is that we're going to choke everybody down then to 5 feet here when we get into the park. And I only express that because we're undertaking our pedestrian plan and we have identified this as a critical connector piece to College Avenue. I was a little disappointed that there wasn't more support amongst my fellow council members to try to work with the Marsh and Center Region Park and Rec on getting that piece, the sidewalk piece, to 8 feet. You know, like we'd be willing to ante up the incremental difference. I mean, you mentioned there's no right-of-way issues, there's no grading issues. I think in hindsight, we'll regret not taking that opportunity right now to put that in at 8 feet. I know there's not support amongst the rest of council members. I just wanted to go on record there as saying that. So that's all I had.
I don't know that the rest of council knows that there's not support on it yet, but let's keep going.
Well, there didn't seem to be any when
Oh,
I
yeah,
floated it.
yeah. No, I think
2
it
weeks ago.
actually
Oh, yeah.
came up at the last meeting. Paul?
No, back to what Carla said, I mean, this is in many ways the ideal alignment. I mean, we have a piece of correspondence here that I think outlines it really well. I mean, you know, it bypasses the activity in the center of the park and the building and increases safety. You know, I think in many ways this is the ideal solution, whether it's 5 or 8 feet. I think, you know, from the context of access to and in some cases around the marsh, this is a much better solution. And I believe you answered my question about signage, so that folks coming from Puddintown heading into the marsh know to make that right turn that points out and says, you know, this way to, you know, get out to the road, basically. No, I mean, I think this is a great solution, and, you know, I applaud you for thinking out of the box, and wherever the idea came from, I think it's a great one.
All right, great. Jen, one admin note, we did not take official action to table this, correct? Such that we need to take official
No, I
action
don't
to
believe that
untable.
you did.
Okay, just confirming, that was my recollection, but I am getting older. So, what my peers have said, and to Eric's point, I think there is potential support for that I think specifically we said if we can only require 5 foot of them, but if it's a public goal, then public dollars would need to be put to it. Now, I believe, Jeff, you said that could be added too. Obviously, the time to do it is when you're originally installing it, correct?
Yeah, the
Mobilization,
existing
et cetera.
topo lends itself that, there's a little bit of elevation change, like I said, around this curve area here. There is a little bit of I'll call it a width restriction down in front of the parking area, but it's nothing that couldn't be, dealt with.
So follow-up question to that, would Parks and you be able to structure your potential RFP to build this, that we could have a unit price to get to the 8 feet, that then we could contribute as part of your project without creating an issue in your project?
I don't think that would be an issue, to go back and figure out what that cost difference would be so you're asking what the difference to go from 5 feet to 8 feet, to know what College Township.
Well, in
is running.
addition, in your bidding, when you're getting it bid, such that if we have the money and support it and agree to it, that then we could do it, but if not, then you could go with your 5 foot.
Yeah,
Like an
I
alternate.
think.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah,
right.
a bid alternate.
That,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly. I just wanted to make sure I was.
Sure,
following. But
yeah.
No, I don't think that would be any issue to be able to
And
do
if we
that.
could ask that of you and Kathy and Pam to build that into your thinking of the RFP. And then that gives us an opportunity to make sure that what we're investing, how we're gonna pay for it, all that good kind of stuff, and everything, so we don't miss the opportunity. The only other item I recall from the last meeting was there's discussion on entrance lights. How has that been resolved?
Well, they are providing an entrance light at the entrance into the public parking lot. And the way our ordinance is written is if it's an existing driveway, you don't have to do that. So with the other driveway, no improvements being made, it's not required. Like, for example, at Reardon, we did have them do that. That's because that driveway was technically a new driveway because it was getting a highway occupancy permit.
Okay,
So in this case, they would not need one, the second entrance.
okay.
Or either entrance?
No, they volunteered to do the one at the parking lot, the main parking lot.
Like the low light that we were talking about, or
Right, good question, that's,
Right now, it is proposed to be a 15-foot high, what I would call a shoebox type light, to where it will have the rectangular type head that has the cutoff, type reflectors on it to keep all the light casting down. There is a lighting plan that does show that the light itself is set up that basically no light would project backwards onto Puddingtown Road. Any light would be from this point slightly forward in towards the driveway itself into the parking lot.
okay. I would just offer if this is a voluntary item and stuff, I know because there was expressed sensitivity to this being a nature center, but it was also expressed, it's being used for other stuff now and everything like that. Potentially, it's not something I think we need to figure in here because it's part of your project, not our requirement, is the low bollard type lights. Feels like it would be more appropriate at the nature center. If we're not trying to check the blocks of the ordinance.
Yeah, realistically, if we have flexibility to I'll say change or revise this style of light, as long as it's a requirement that a light needs to be there, we need to quantify that at some level. Council would be okay with that. That's something that we can work and progress through. It's just called a light, proposed light right now. But the way that we have all basically the design done is based on that 15-foot mounted structure.
Any thoughts from council on that? Or do we just leave it to the developers?
Don, did you want to comment at all on that proposal about
Well,
the possibility of?
Yeah, technically, that is an existing driveway. There's no new occupancy permit required for that. So if it would be a bollard style, that would be acceptable.
Okay. So just a consideration.
I appreciate your comments on that, Rich, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. So we'll leave it in your capable hands. You heard the comments at our last meeting about concerns about putting any light there. So that seems like a nice identification, yet not intrusive possibility. Anything else on this matter? Yeah, Paul?
Do we have to amend the proposed motion in any way to account for that alternate bid?
I would think you might amend it to say that number 4, an alternate light at the entrance may be considered.
I think you're talking about.
Yeah, you're.
I was
no,
talking about the
yeah,
5 foot, 8 foot, I'm sorry.
Yep,
That was the nature of my question,
Yeah.
but maybe
maybe needs
Maybe
both.
have 2 of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it may
Yeah,
need
okay.
both.
As part of the approval, we request that
Request
the
the bid
project be
alternate.
bid with an alternate for the 8-foot wide.
Okay. At this point, I'll open it up. Is there anybody? Yes, Kathy, please. Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Kathy Madison. I live on Puddintown Road, and I'm also the chairperson of the Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority. I just have, and I'm here as a private citizen. The only question I have, as we consider the difference between 5 foot and 8 foot, is I know that you would like to do a sidewalk on East College Avenue eventually, down Puddintown, to continue this on. And I just, for our consideration, would there be enough to do, would you do 8 foot wide through that section? Is there enough room for that? And if not, how would you see that tying in to go down from, say, 5 to 8? It's just sort of a logistical question for me
Understood.
as I
Adam,
consider
who do
it.
you want to?
Yeah, well, Dawn is.
Yeah, I actually walked that between the last meeting and this meeting and before I met with Jeff. And I believe that there would be a possibility to get an 8-foot on down, at least to the entrance to Lifelink. There may be a need to do a crossing at Lifelink. There's some good sight distance there. You know, putting down the speeds up, but you're getting a little closer to the intersection. But it would take a little bit of a design to decide what you could do down through there. And a portion of the sidewalk, if not most of it, would be actually technically on private property. That's only a 33-foot right-of-way. I mean, our goal would be to get that 8 foot the whole way down. And I think it's going to be doable to, there may be a couple of places you got to really look at. But from Lifelink onto College Avenue, the other side of the road is actually better because you have guide rail on that side, and it's maybe a 4-foot shoulder, and we're not moving the guide rail because it's right at the top of the stream bank, so that side's fixed. But,
So, to
I mean,
make
that's
sure
our
I-
goal, and that's why we're also stopping about 20 feet short of the property line, is because once we did get a design down through there, it might not line up exactly with where we're ending, so that's gonna give us a little wiggle room to
Yeah.
get something to tie in.
Good. Just to confirm, when you're talking towards College Avenue, are you talking the potential path being on the Lifelink side of the road or the other side?
Well, from Lifelink to College Avenue, I think it's gonna have to be on the Lifelink side
Okay,
because.
no,
of the
I
guide
just
rail.
think that's a good thing in light of our path to campus discussions
Right.
and everything that factors in nicely. Is council okay if we take this drawing down right now? And at this point, I'd ask if there's any members, anybody attending remotely that would like to speak on this proposed plan. I'm not seeing, oh, Melissa, please.
Yes, thank you. Melissa Kaufman, Nature Center Supervisor at Millbrook March. I just am asking JR for some clarification on the path renewal. The path renewal will still be needed behind the barn leading to the back side of the education building. So just asking for clarification there.
Yeah, Melissa, we can include that in, we just, because of the direction of the council discussion about the sidewalk, a lot of that trail surface was removed, basically to maintain what the council's wishes were on sidewalk, but we can definitely include that in as part of the project, it just didn't really fit with requirements from council.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Pam?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Melissa's statement and JR's. So the reason for that path renewal is that'll be a path used by our puddle jumpers program, and it really will allow us to separate those small children walking to the march versus getting on the bike path. So it just kind of really gives us some great separation there. So I came on a little late, and we were concerned that something was being removed, and just wanted to clarify.
Sounds good, thanks. Anyone else joining us remote that has anything to comment on this plan? Seeing nor hearing none, at this point, if council is comfortable, staff has provided a recommended motion, and per Paul's question, we're going to add, potentially add 2 items to it. Anybody up for the challenge?
I've made some notes, I will give it a shot.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the Millbrook March Nature Center Spring Creek Education Building Phase 2 and Welcome Pavilion Preliminary/Final Land Development Plan dated October 18th, 2021, last revised January 13, 2022, subject to the following conditions. 1, obtain all required signatures. 2, fully comply with College Township Code Section 180-12. 3, alternate sidewalk with bituminous surface as shown on land development plan dated January 13, 2022 is approved. 4, finalize driveway entrance lighting options in consultation with the township engineer. 5, request a bid alternate for potential expansion of the proposed path from 5 feet to 8 feet.
Excellent, thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Carla seconds. Any further discussion?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Their comment about the path renewal is in no way inhibited by this at all. Okay, great.
Nope. Okay, anything else? If not, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you both very much. This is very exciting.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good job, guys.
Continuing on, reports, managers update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be kind of a quick tick down through quite a few of these items. Pike Street, traffic calming construction. We are in preparation of the bid documents. We'll soon be going out to bid with respect to Phase 2 of the Pike Street reconstruction project, traffic calming sidewalk project. One of the things that Mr. Franson, Township Engineer, and I wanted to be sure to bring to council's attention and to the public's attention is that we are anticipating holding yet one final open house, and I believe it's February 10th.
February 10th, 6 to 8.
February 10th, 6 to 8. And the purpose of that is to review with those that are interested, those that are being impacted by the construction. And again, keep in mind, this is going to be a 5 to 6 month construction period. This is the biggest lift as part of the Pike Street project, is to familiarize everybody with the construction timetable, the sequencing, you know, the traffic patterns, those types of things. Don, was there anything additionally that you wanted to say about that?
Just that we want everyone to understand what's going to happen as far as some closures. We'll be working on the one side, and then we have to flip over to the other side, and it's going to impact access to the properties. During the construction of the water line, I actually met with several of the people, came out, and we talked about what would be going on, and I let everyone know that we would be doing a second open house, but I am also entertaining people coming to the office who want to one-on-one with the plan. I have the owner of the gallery coming in next week, to go over some things. They're looking at maybe doing some improvements beyond what we are, and they want to make sure they're going to work. But other than that, I'm just looking at it as an open house format, not a formal presentation. Just people can come in. We're going to have an updated map along there with some updated photos. It's going to be pretty much what's there, but anyone come in, we'll explain. The engineer, Michael Pratt, will be here from Keller, and we'll explain, here's what we're doing in front of your property. Here's how you'll be able to access your property during construction.
Thanks, Don. Moving on, and I'm not going to take Mr. Dara's thunder here, but the PC did have a work session to discuss the Dale Summit Small Area Plan, and I think that they've reached a consensus on a recommendation. I'll leave that for Ed to discuss with council. LTAC met on, I believe it was the 12th of January? Do I have the date wrong?
Wednesday.
It was something.
Recently, very recently, within the last week.
It was
It's a Wednesday. I assure you it was a Wednesday.
Last Wednesday, with respect to the neighborhood recommendation. LTAC received that, listened to that, and LTAC will be forwarding to council a request relative to some engineering work on some elements that were discussed by LTAC and the neighborhood group. The Spring Creek Park Master Plan. I do know that Amy Kerner has been working with the consultant who did fall back a bit in terms of the original schedule. She has been working with him to get that schedule brought up to date and to bring everybody forward to kind of catch up in a relatively short period of time. So that work continues, but we're looking forward to that. There will be an opportunity for College Township Council to receive preliminary recommendations from the consultant, have the opportunity for council to review those, ask questions, weigh in, before it goes on to the latter stages of the development of the plan. So that will be forthcoming, and I'm expecting that sometime within the next 2 months that we'll be doing that. With respect to Thompson Woods Preserve, we do have a meeting, finally. We have a meeting that is scheduled with State College Borough, Clearwater, Center Region Parks and Rec, and College Township personnel for Thursday, the 27th. Of course, all of this is with an eye toward creating a formalized governance structure for Thompson Woods. Given the end of the year, things kind of tailed off. It was difficult to gather folks, but we are now back on track with that. And I think, there are a couple of things that are not on the manager's update that I did want to make mention of. We are anticipating our new website to go live, and I think it's next Tuesday or Wednesday?
Monday, the 31st.
Oh, okay, on the 31st, so we got a little bit of time yet, but soon, prior to our next meeting, a brand-new College Township website will be introduced. Staff has been working very diligently, just completed 3 full days of training on the website, and my thanks to Mike and to Jen and to Kim Petitschnock, to Shane Adams, and anybody else that participated in those trainings. They were grueling, but it was very, very helpful. The other thing I just wanted to make mention of, in receipt of quite a few applications for the Assistant Township Manager position. So that search is going well at this point. We're still in a review process and more to come on that. And last but not least, Mr. Mike Bloom is, I don't know if it's celebrating, perhaps it is. This is Mike's last meeting with us. Yes.
So you're telling Mike Bloom didn't apply to him?
No, he didn't apply. I'm very disappointed, but this is Mike's last meeting with us, and certainly I want to thank Mike professionally and personally for all that he has done here at College Township. He's brought a great deal of expertise to a lot of the work that we've been doing. It certainly has not gone unnoticed, and it will be missed. And so, Godspeed. Thank you very much, Mike, for everything that you've done. And that's the end of my report, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Great. Questions for the manager? Eric?
Cake and ice cream afterwards?
Let's not get too.
Hey, on the path to campus, the last sentence, anticipate submitting identical application, is in the best case scenario, that would be an application for the remaining cost of doing.
Actually, no, this would be, and Mike, perhaps you
Sure.
might be able to
Yeah.
take this one a little better than I.
One of the things when we developed the multimodal grant under PennDOT, my suggestion from past practice is, given the overlap in time periods and basically identical application form, makes sense to apply for CFA, the Commonwealth Financing Authority, at the same time. So I believe that comes open sometime around April. My recommendation to the township would be to submit there as well. Gives you two shots at the same goal, so.
Right. But we're not anticipating receiving, should we be successful in the current grant application, we're not likely to get the entire amount we need, correct?
From my experience, it seems like under PennDOT, you have a better possibility of getting the
Okay.
full amount. Under CFA, it tends to be a bit of a sliding scale.
But
So,
we could conceivably, if we were successful, we could get some money from both.
there's always that potential.
Okay. Was it?
Great. Paul, anything for the manager?
No, just second thanks to Mike for all you've done. We're not done with you yet, though. 'Cause
Yeah.
we-
I'm not going far, so you know where to find me.
Exactly. Maybe no cake and ice cream yet for you, we'll see.
Very good.
Thanks.
Carla, anything for the manager?
No, thank you, manager.
The only thing I would have, there was a recent court case involving College Township. If the manager could just confirm that the results of that case does not require any changes to our normal ordinances, that really that was in light of the COVID order.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're referring to the event that was cited, that was held, the wrestling event that was held back, I think it would have been September of 2020, that resulted in a number of citations. One of the citations was actually a criminal citation for overcrowding. That was actually prosecuted by the Center County District Attorney's Office. It carried a $300 fine. That was actually, what's the terminology that I'm looking for?
Held up?
Well, it was actually, it was not
Not-
withheld. It was not upheld.
Held.
It was not upheld by the court. And so, but in terms of rationale, that was being enforced underneath at the time, the temporary COVID ordinance that we had adopted. And so, the answer to the question posed by the chair is there is nothing that I see that College Township needs to do with respect to its regular and normal ordinances that needs to be adjusted as a result of that court case.
Great, thank you. We just, anytime our ordinances come in contact with action, we need to see if there's tweaks that we need to do to that. So thank you. COG, Regional, County, and Liaison Reports. Paul, you've had a couple meetings. Anything fun to share?
Fun, sure. Yes, the Public Safety Committee met last Tuesday. Most of the meeting was about reorganization. I was actually elected chair of that for this coming year, so there'll be, that ought to be fun.
Cake and ice cream.
Yeah, I will make sure that there's cake and ice cream when appropriate. Yeah, it was mainly about reappointment of officers and things. We did talk a little bit about recommending the lease space for Alpha, which will, I'm sure, come up in other appointments there. And the only other thing of note in the meeting was that we had a full complement of representatives, which was very nice to see there. Yesterday, the Spring Creek Watershed Commission met, and again, I was elected chair of that, so.
Oh, there's your ice cream.
Yeah, there's my ice cream, exactly. The one thing of note is we've been talking about this Phase 3 working group for a while, and we actually have decided on a plan. We're going to be soliciting nominations over the next month or so for membership in that, and then an executive committee will meet and nominate a slate of potential members to that, which will then be voted on at the next meeting. So we are continuing to make progress on that. And I will say that anybody who's interested, we have a great slate of informative educational presentations lined up for the coming year. So please check out the website for that. Yesterday, College Township IDA met. There was a bit of confusion, mainly on my part, as to when they were meeting, so I do not have a report on that, but I will make sure that I double up the next time.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any questions for Paul? Carla, any meetings? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I attended the, not public services, it is the new one. Why, I always remember it, now I can't. Well, my computer's dead
Lucy?
anyway.
Lucy?
Nope,
Not Lucy. Oh, the
Sustainability Committee, yeah. And that was just your typical reorganization meeting where you review your agenda items for the year. And Betsy Whitman was voted chair and I was voted vice chair. So we will have a grand old time.
Cake and ice cream.
Cake and ice cream.
Any other?
Not that I recall.
Okay, nothing on, you're gonna let Adam stand on LTAC?
Adam did a great job.
Okay, great. Any questions for Carla? Eric, Eric supplied a written report. Anything you'd like to highlight in
Yeah,
that?
I had a meeting the day after that also,
Okay.
and it was our land use, community infrastructure, which is the new Lucy Committee. And we've had the same type of agenda that Carla had. It was pretty much the standard reorg process. Denny was elected chair and Lisa Strickland was elected vice chair. The only thing that wasn't standard was we had a discussion about creating liaisons between COG committees. And it was an interesting discussion. The idea is that members of other committees could sit in on meetings, and I was a bit of a Debbie Downer here in that I thought a lot of that communication and back and forth could happen at the individual council meetings. But I do understand in select circumstances that liaisons might be helpful, maybe as a standing, if you've got a big project going on. But my point was, I think if you communicate like we do right now at every meeting, they would generally not be necessary. I went so far as to offer up an example of Rich's finance report that came in a few days later as an example of how we provide updates ahead of the meeting that are included in the packet, and we note where we need feedback on so that folks can absorb it and then have the discussion at the meeting. That was very well received. It was interesting. Ferguson has started something like that, but the borough is very interested in doing something like that. So just so you know, Rich, your finance committee report was used as an example of how we communicate.
Okay.
Mostly because yours was, the box was checked and you were looking for specific feedback. And
Yeah, it was a great, yeah.
so it was a perfect timing and perfect example. The day before that is the meeting that I provided the written report, which is facilities. And one thing, there's a typo, that should say Tuesday, January 11th at the top, not Thursday. And while I did check the box that said required council comments back to the committee, that was really just to remind me to point out two things on here, because for the most part, the decisions have already been made. But the first one was the discussion involving the solar power purchasing agreement. We had a fairly lengthy discussion as to what COG committee that should fall to. You know, what COG committee should be the starting point for any regional decisions that have to be made, assuming this moves forward and we enter into an agreement. My thinking was, without a facilities committee, this probably would have fallen to finance.
Yeah.
But I agreed with staff that now that we have a facilities committee, that might be a good committee, that might be the best committee for at least the decision and recommendation to start at. Eventually it will go to finance and eventually to executive, but it's got to start somewhere. It's not just about the dollars. So you will probably hear, our finance rep will probably hear about that discussion, and ultimately it'll probably be discussed at exec. I haven't seen the agenda for Monday yet. I don't know if it's on the agenda.
Yep.
But informally, we endorsed that. There was no motion. The second thing had to do with the fire protection program and their need to lease additional space. We got a really detailed, very well done presentation from Lou Brumgart on the condition of, or the three stations and where they're at as far as space goes and what their needs are. And it's pretty clear they have an immediate need for additional space. And I'll credit them for designating the additional space need for centralizing some parts storage, not trying to recreate things that they already have. So the idea is they're going to lease some space. They're going to move some work that they do to the lease space, work that's common between the three locations, and also storage needs that are common to the three locations to the off-site lease space. The reason this is on there is we had first shot at the lease, and Rich, as the outgoing facilities rep, had some very good comments on the lease, suggested changes that he would like to see, having quite a bit of experience, obviously, in that area. Instead of holding up this action by facilities, it was agreed that those suggestions would go back to the solicitor. And since that meeting, there's been some correspondence back and forth between Lou and the COG solicitor and Rich. And what we agreed at the meeting was to move the agreement forward, because facilities were really just supporting the idea that there needs to be leased space and we need to have an agreement, and we were going to let the details of the agreement be worked out between the solicitor, to the solicitor and Rich's satisfaction.
Well, he is the COG chair.
As far as I can tell, that's happening. It will also probably go to exec committee and then to general forum. So instead of holding the process up on it, what we thought were resolvable issues, we moved it forward. Thanks, Rich.
Okay, questions for Eric? I have had Finance Committee, I submitted a report for that. If there's any questions on that, apparently it's around COG, so that's a good thing. The item that Eric mentioned about feedback from council, that goal matrix just came out this week, and I think our intent is Adam, Bob, and I will take a first crack at it and then forward to council, like recommendations on it. And then at one of our February meetings, I'll be asking for consensus or feedback on that. And then we'll take that forward at the March finance meeting. So other than that, a lot of the stuff that we touched on in our meeting was touched on at some of these other meetings. On the fire lease, something came up after your meeting in that, from a building construction standpoint, they needed to, the building that they're looking at is not sprinkled. So you have to be careful what uses you bring, you know, what use was in there and what use you're bringing into there, that it doesn't create a fire separation issue. The code director was very helpful in going to the microfiche and digging that out and finding out the information, and it appears that we won't be creating any issues with that, and so that that can continue to move forward. That was holding, we'll probably see that at the February general forum, that lease we'll see there. The pool slide, we got some information on the pool slide. We got more information at the exec meeting, similar to, we kept it moving forward pending other things, and we got the final things at exec, and I'll go over those. Any questions for me for finance?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that, and Paul will probably see this, that the lease space, according to the presentation from Lou, the lease space is a temporary solution.
Yes.
You have probably seen it at finance. I'm assuming public safety has seen the projections for an eventual new building with a price tag of somewhere between $7 and $8 million.
I didn't see that one.
Maybe we were the first ones to see the
They don't want to show that to residents.
No, we didn't see that either, but it was clear that it was a temporary space, and
Yeah, and
it was
that-
intended to be that.
Right,
Yeah.
to the facilities, you know, that's one of the mindsets that everybody wants to jump to the long-term solution. Sometimes you have to have these intermittent ones. The parks office is a great example.
And as long as it keeps showing up in College Township, I'm okay.
That's what I mentioned that, by the way. I'm like,
That didn't escape me at all, yeah. And the other good thing with the fire lease, it's with a landlord that we already have had a very positive relationship with. That helps a lot.
It's not a big question mark.
That was
yeah.
pointed out in the meeting.
Yeah, good. Unless there's any other questions on finance, I'll move to exec. As you know, we meet next Monday. The agenda did just come out today, I believe. What you will see there is College Township will assume the chair of COG with the borough as the vice chair as our standing rotation. You will see a first time ever consent agenda in the general forum agenda. Hopefully that'll help some things, a bunch of different items in there. A lot of housekeeping items throughout that we'll see. We're going to be getting a report from the Mount Nittany Medical Center on the current status there. Going back to the solar power purchasing, just so that you're aware, Executive Committee is recommending Danelle Del Corso to replace Peter Buck as our representative on that
Nice.
entity. For the PA COG municipal appointment, Bud Graham was recommended again. Bud currently served last year and will serve this year, but Bud will be stepping down after this year. So if you have any interest in PA COG, please let us know. Again, the pool slide, you will see that. Finance recommended moving forward with the project, even though the bids came in over budget twice. Not as much the second time, but it was definitely, such that the current line item didn't cover it. Finance moved it forward pending how all the monies were gonna work out, but with the understanding that it would be via a budget amendment using the current approved budget amounts, total budget amount, and not to require new donations from the municipalities. At the executive, they had time to digest everything. The majority of that project is gonna be paid for out of fund balance coming in greater than budgeted at the beginning of the year. They did move one item over from a 2022 project to a 2023 project in the capital improvement budget, not significant, but again, no real changes on dollars. We did our initial glance at the 2022 evaluation process for the executive director. One of the items was to split one of the evaluation items that was a little muddy on who it was about into two. One basically being an internal item where how they deal with the executive committee, the other committees, the general forum, and then the second one, how the executive director deals with the municipalities, their boards, commissions, and staffs. And so that was that draft language was adopted and put into it. The second phase of that is that feeds into a new item, another new item for the evaluation process, in that we will be setting goals and objectives for the executive director. He provided a very nice starting point for the executive committee, and we'll just look to supplement that. Executive director's report, you'll have a bunch of matters of record, and just a general note that COG is doing a nice job of establishing multiple repository locations of information, whether it be for governance policies, Whitehall Road Park, COG facilities, etc. So those are out there, hopefully one-stop shopping. That should be it. Any questions for me on exec? Very good. Next up, PC.
We've had 2 meetings since the last time I reported to the council. We had our meeting on January 4th. That was a reorganization meeting. Ray will now be the chair. I'm the vice chair. Peggy continues to be the secretary. Ray will be our elective to the Center Region Funding Commission. Bill Sharp will be his alternative. I will continue to make sure council knows what we're doing, and Jen will be my alternative. During that meeting, we also looked at, we've had many meetings now about the form-based lending codes concerning the Dale Summit. We've had 3 work meetings on that. We sent a recommendation that we approved at Tuesday's meeting to council, that we feel that we're going to look at a smaller geographic area than the whole Dale Summit study area to look at the form-based codes. We think it's easier that way to look at specific areas versus the whole thing. We also know that we're going to have to do some interim zoning changes to get this kicked off, because with form-based codes, it's going to take a year, maybe 2 years to write all this into an ordinance form. We also are recommending that we have a joint meeting between council and the planning commission to understand the form-based codes, the area we're looking at, of how we can put all this together, and also look at the number of studies we've looked at, case studies we've seen. Let's see. Sorry, I'm not totally organized here. On the 13th, we also looked at the change of an ordinance that's already on the books. It's for the wireless communication facility. They have changed and approved a new act, Pennsylvania Act 50, went into effect on June 30th. Also FCC also has regulates the small wireless stuff. Staff looked at it, recommended that we go to outside counsel, who also helped us write our original ordinance. We had a meeting on that on Tuesday. We also had comments from the public, and that gentleman had 20 minutes of our time, presented a 50-page study to us that he came up with. He also gave us some other handouts during the committee, during the meeting, which we looked at, he read to us word for word. We then looked at the proposed ordinance with the changes. We voted on that, and that's recommended to council to look at and to enact it if you feel it should be. It's written to comply with the new Act 50 and FCC. You'll be seeing that probably your next meeting. Let's see. That is, we are excited about the form base. We've had some really good discussions. We had good discussions on the Dale Summit, how we can grow that area, and what we can do to get Lindsay's plan off the dead center. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions for Ed?
None for me, thank you.
Paul?
No, thank you.
Carla?
No, thanks, Ed.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ed.
thank
Just
you.
wait.
Sorry, Rick.
Thanks. One, I agree completely. Very excited about the joint meeting. We're overdue in general, council and planning commission. We look forward to those opportunities and everything. So can't wait to hear what you guys are recommending. One favor, as liaison, if you're not going to be able to attend or your alternate is not going to be, if you could just let staff or council know and everything. The big thing, we appreciate that you're coming here and spending this time with us, and some of it you hopefully you drone out in some of it, but there's other times that your input is very valuable to us. So we want to make sure that the PC has a voice at council when appropriate and everything, and you can help us with that.
Okay.
To just let us know for sure if you're not.
Yeah, we'll make sure that that is clarified, and
Great,
if I
perfect.
can't come and Jen can't come, we will make sure.
Yep, great,
that,
perfect. Yeah, just
staff knows,
great.
or Rich, I'll send you an email.
That works great, Ed. Thank you very much. Staff, anything on planning commission stuff you want to add on?
I think Ed did a great job. I think we're all pretty excited about the joint meeting again, so we'll
Yep.
work. Once that recommendation comes to council, then Jen and I can get together and work out create a doodle poll so we can get the maximum number of PC and council members
Great.
to attend.
Excellent. Yeah, that is the goal, max. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's always tough to get 100% of both bodies, but we've come pretty close every time that we've tried before. If we do have enough notice, I think we can get it. And there's a desire. There's a desire on both bodies to make
I'll
it.
try to make cookies.
And planning
Yeah,
commission,
food helps.
to go on planning commission, and I've been here now 2 years. It's very enlightening of what you need to know, what background you need to know, how to interact with council, how to interact with the different ordinances that we have. One of the things, as a new member, only 2 years, to learn the municipal codes and to look at those things, you really have to put some time and effort in this. So anybody that wants to volunteer to do this, there's time involved, and there's time involved with getting to know how council really wants to shape the community, so.
Yeah. Eric did it 15 years. I still don't know if he knows how to do it.
And that's the toughest job, being on planning commission.
Nope, you guys put in a yeoman's effort on keeping us straight. One item I did hear is you're gonna strike up your other matters discussions
Yes.
again. That's exciting stuff. You can never stop learning, so that can only benefit the township, so thank you. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda for January 20th consists of 2 sets of minutes, the January 3rd reorganization and the January 3rd regular meeting. Correspondence, we received a letter from Brian Rogers, University Park Airport Director, dated December 30th, 2021, regarding United Service to Newark. We received a letter from Patricia and John Floor, dated December 23rd, 2021, regarding Millbrook Marsh. We received an email from Daniel Materna, dated January 12th, 2022, regarding the casino public comments. And we received an email from Lori Gravish, dated January 15th, 2022, regarding Center Hills Village. Under action items, we are potentially appointing Mr. David Lipinski to the UAJA board with a term of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2026. Does council wish any of those items pulled for further discussion? The manager.
If I may make a clarification, the action item on the appointment of
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski is simply a technical correction. So this is something that you had seen during the reorganization meeting. This is just a slight modification to the term to align it properly.
I forgot to put him on the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Yeah,
it's just.
yeah.
It is.
I stand corrected.
We fixed that at what you're talking about.
Yeah,
at the
I'm sorry.
reorganization.
I stand
Okay,
corrected.
Yeah,
It does do both.
well, you don't need to stand, you can sit.
Thank you.
Any council wish any of the items in the consent agenda? If not, I'll accept the motion to approve.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion,
Second?
we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now, what we've all been waiting for.
No.
Old Business 1, Pedestrian Master Plan, Review, Remand, Bloom.
All right. As if, oops, sorry, got the wrong thing up there. That better? All right, so you have received an awful lot of presentations from me, and, being my last meeting, I couldn't go out without one more. So,
That's Mike.
consider this your cake and ice cream. This is what I hope is a final presentation to council before this moves to a remand to Planning Commission. As Ed alluded, they've had a lot on their plate, and we want to put more on there. They do great work, and we want to keep them busy.
Keeps them out of trouble.
So this will not look too dissimilar, but it's a continuation of the discussions that you've had at the last 2 meetings. Again, I would be remiss if I didn't start with the goal of this plan is to provide an interconnected, continuous, and well-maintained network of sidewalks, shared use paths, and other related facilities that provide all users, regardless of age and ability, with safe and efficient access to numerous key destinations throughout College Township and the Center region. So the draft plan, I know I've come to you a couple times with percentages of how this plan is, where it's at. I can't claim that this is a 100% draft plan. I wish I could, but we're close. This is a mostly fully baked plan. It just needs seasoned by Planning Commission to get us across the goal line. What we're looking here is a continuation of the previous discussion with a focus on the revisions that were made after the last meeting. In particular, Section 4 of the plan, existing and future conditions. If you've had a chance to look at the attachments, which I'm sure you have, we've added 3 additional maps to the plan, a future conditions map. You saw that at the last meeting. We showed that to you in the mapping application. 2 new maps, barriers to connectivity and investment corridors, which I'll get into in just a minute. And then in Section 5 and recommendations, this is where a lot of changes have occurred based on great feedback by council. The recommendations section, particularly, we touched pedestrian fee in lieu, the waiver process, official map revisions, and the project prioritization matrix. So without further ado, as I do with these, I do like to give you a couple food for thought questions. What we're seeking is your confirmation on the direction of the plan and that it's ready for remand and review by Planning Commission. A couple of the things to be thinking about as we walk through this is, do the new future conditions maps provide enough detail and direction for your future decision making? Do the revisions to the proposed pedestrian fee in lieu and waiver process capture council's intent? Again, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about that at the last meeting. I think we hit the sweet spot based on that. I just want to confirm that. And does the updated project prioritization matrix provide adequate measurement of a proposed project's importance to the network and the community? So this screen, or this slide should look familiar. The proposed future network slide, nothing's changed here from what you saw at your last meeting. Again, what we're trying to achieve with this is an equity of access. And what does that mean? It's an initial measure of effectiveness that evaluates if a neighborhood is either well-served or underserved in terms of how it accesses the core pedestrian facilities, or those red lines you see on the map. The proposed network, as shown, attempts to raise all of the underserved neighborhoods to well-served by connecting them in some form or fashion with that core pedestrian facilities network. What you haven't seen from the last meeting was, as we looked at this, those lines on the paper, we wanted to be cognizant of barriers to the connectivity. And what you see here, most pronounced in the blue lines, there are some underlying colors, a little hard to see on our projection here tonight. Really 4 different types of barriers that we identified. Engineering's kind of our catch-all. That's where there's any feature that makes design or construction of a facility more challenging and in some instances, not feasible. Policy, this one's specific to our parks at this point, and a discussion that I know has been ongoing, and I think we're headed towards a resolution. That's a municipal or a regional policy that somehow limits access to the network. Private property, this is a specific location where we know that an easement through private property is needed to make some connectivity. We show one on here. We talked about one earlier with Puddintown. We don't identify those in sweeping fashion on this because there would be certainly a lot of them. We just highlight the ones that are kind of important in terms of those core connections. And in future development, this is more of a timing than a barrier. When you look at these and are identified in the mapping, this is in a location where we either have something in the pipeline or expecting a development in the pipeline. And that future development may help resolve the barrier of connectivity that exists currently. Just outside of the Lamont area, there's one identified that when that development kind of broadens out over time, that connection is going to be made and resolve that barrier. So we wanted to show this this is your reality check moment in terms of those initial lines on paper, but it also provides a drill down for our next piece, which is where we kind of get into the heart of what we think is important in terms of investment corridors. We identified really 2 layers of investment corridors. Priority investment corridors, and these are the corridors that aimed at closing the gaps within the core system. As we've emphasized throughout this plan, it's critical to us to make some connectivity to the core system, but we need to make sure that core system's healthy to begin with. And what you see on yellow within this plan, or within this map that's shown on the screen, are places where we see kind of priority investment locations for the township and or private development to make some connections to kind of bring that core facility to whole. And the corridors in question, no surprises, this is exactly what lands on where we saw the most comments through the public input period early on in this process. East College Avenue, Puddintown Road, which based on your action tonight, you closed a big chunk of that one. Elmwood Avenue, Hauserville Road, East Branch Road and Pike Street, and finally Shiloh Road. These are areas where we're emphasizing in the plan that, we're thinking some municipal investment, maybe, through the leveraging of grants, much like the Path to Campus effort, will be needed to be undertaken to close these gaps or fill in these corridors. You also see on the map 2 kind of purple or pink alignments, and we call these as secondary investment corridors. These corridors were designed, going back to how we talked about thinking of the pedestrian network as kind of a watershed. Think about water. and as it flows, a stream or a creek, when it gets some type of barrier or a dam in the stream, that water still needs a place to go. It needs that path of least resistance. That's what we're trying to achieve with these corridors. It's a recognition of particularly East College Avenue between Elmwood Street out here right in front of the building to the Nittany Mall without significant changes and investment really from PennDOT. That's currently an insurmountable or infeasible section. How do we make the connections outside of that corridor to kind of fill the same intent? And then the second piece of that is Pike Street from Dale Street to East College Avenue. Really, in terms of right away, the door slams shut on us on that section of the corridor. So the lower or southern side purple alignment tries to overcome that connection basically out to the Dale Summit area. Again, both of these are reaching out to the Dale Summit, trying to make that connection as you get further away from State College Borough and moving through the township, trying to tie into the Dale Summit. And as you know, Ed and Lindsay alluded to, we do have the Dale Summit area plan going on out in that section. These corridors that we're identifying are going to be very critical in terms of that plan. Some of the goals and objectives outlined in that plan talk about improving pedestrian or bike access. These are part and parcel to trying to achieve that. So I'm going to stop right there just for a second just to gauge from council, does this go far enough? Does this get you kind of where you wanted to be in terms of this plan to identifying these investment corridors? Have we drilled down far enough in terms of what you were expecting with this plan? So I will stop there, and Mr. Chair, let you take it from there.
So we'll eat this elephant the same way we did the last time.
Yep.
We'll start this one. Carla, any thoughts, comments for Mike on this?
This is awesome. I'm really happy with 95% of the stuff I'm seeing here. I have some small, little questions about things, but I don't see why that needs to be discussed tonight. Like, that'll come out in the wash, I'm sure, once it goes to Planning Commission and goes through all the systems. So there's nothing, nothing at a big level that I'm looking at that I'm concerned about, or I feel like we're heading in the wrong direction at all. I think that you've provided, sometimes with government and with decision making, it's like there are certain things you just don't want to talk about when you pretend like things are possible for a while, and then when they're not, you keep pretending. And what I really appreciate about this is that you took all of those things and you just put them on there for us to see. Like, it's so much more manageable when it's all laid out for us, and it's not just like all of these other questions, but what about. It's just all organized and laid out, and it gives me a lot of hope for what our goal is here. This is so much more than just a plan on a piece of paper. This is actually this is a roadmap for us. So I'm really excited.
Good.
Yeah.
Eric?
Yeah, I want to, for a second, echo what Carla said. Yes, 30,000-foot view, council view, I'm there. But beyond that, the way that this staff has moved this what could have been far more complicated project through the Planning Commission and to us, and the format and structure that you've used to present it to us in these digestible chunks, I really appreciate. And I know that's what you're supposed to do, but we don't always see it that way, and that's really tough. And I think you guys did a really good job. Two other quick comments. Can we change the zoom on the projector so that the entire projection fits on the screen?
I don't know if we got.
Not right now.
Yeah.
Just,
Oh, not right now.
I'm anal like that, and this has been bugging me for a
No,
while.
that's all good.
Rich mentioned my 15 years on the Planning Commission. 25 years ago when I started, the first issue that we tackled, one of the first, was the Oak Hall Quarry rezoning.
Non-controversial item.
And I said, what the heck did I step into? Anyways, I'm still here. The Puddintown connection, and this is what I don't want to discuss tonight, but I just want to mention it. I think the approach we took tonight by making it a bid alternate buys us the time, for example, to look at that. You know, and in that particular case, if that wasn't ever going to be possible, then we just don't deal with the bid alternate. So I really like that approach that we've taken tonight, and I think we ought to be continue to do things like that as we move through this. So thanks to staff, thanks for the presentation. I'm good on this piece. We're gonna have 2 more stops.
Oh, yeah, we're not done yet.
Paul?
Yeah, I mean, echoing what everyone else has said. I was thinking about when I was reviewing all this, what struck me was that the genesis of this is pretty unique, right? I mean, you almost started with public comment, and then you were able to distill that down into some major areas. And then, as everyone else has said, you sort of worked it through stepwise with us, simplifying it, but that's not really the right word, because we haven't lost the complexity. We've just dealt with it and, use the term organization, clarification. I mean, there's another word in there, but it's not simplification. And that's what I think I really appreciate. And so we've become very familiar with this, but honestly, it's almost in reverse. It's like the public comment started first to drive some of this, and then the experience here around the table that, I think has just really lent itself to this. So I'm really looking forward to getting more eyes on it at this point, because I think that brings it full circle around to giving us confidence that we're on the right track. So, that, I thought it was worth mentioning, that struck me when I was going through this. I think the one comment I would have is, let's make sure that this stays a living document, right? And we've said that along the way, but when we're looking at these investment corridors and other things, I think you sort of alluded to it before with, as conditions change, whether that's new development, whether that's funding sources, whether that's whatever it is, we need to make sure that this is a living document. So anyway, that was what I had at the moment, but thank you for the opportunity to say that.
That's great. My peers have said many, many wonderful things about this. Interesting, today I got into a conversation at my day job because of something that was happening at my night job. There was questions about process. And I live the process and everything. And so my staff started throwing out Richisms at me, and one of them was plan the work the plan. And that's what you're doing, Mike. And I really appreciate Paul's comment about it being living, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Our world is evolving and everything. So, I hope that, as I recall, we have a defined periodic review period built into this, which is critical. That happens, unfortunately, doesn't happen with a lot of our documents. And so they get put on the shelf until there's an issue or we want to do it different, and then we've got to chew through it. So I think that's a critical piece. The continual review piece is critical, especially with all the investment that's been made to this point. So we don't want to lose any momentum on that and everything. So I have no, other than that, we're on the right path, I believe.
Great, well, thank you all, I appreciate that, appreciate the kind comments, and, obviously this has been a team approach, and we're pretty happy with where we're at, and excited, as Rich alluded to, and Paul, you alluded to, getting additional eyes on this, making sure that, it's not just being viewed through our lens, that we're viewed through multiple lenses. So I will keep moving. In the recommendation section, so as we move to section 5 of the plan, you'll recall this list that we talked about at the last meeting. Amending the existing ordinances to include fee in lieu, modify the process for granting sidewalk waivers, revisions to the official map, strengthening the requirements for transit facilities, I'll come back to that one in just a second, Slight changes to facility design requirements and evaluation of regional park path use policy. Based on the discussion that we had last time, those last three, I kind of put the green checks next to them. I feel like we did those justice, and we wanted to bring the other three back to you to have a little further discussion based on your comments. The first one that's checked there with the transit facilities, and I give a ton of credit to Eric, and I appreciate, his expertise that he provided during that discussion. To use the cliche, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're doing a good job with transit facilities, and we don't need to swing that pendulum any further than we already have. So I have scrubbed that from this plan. That is gone, and that's a credit to, I think, success that we've had here and to Eric's recognition and comments on that. So that one's off the books. That's why it's scratched through. The other two remain in there, but I felt pretty comfortable with where where council was with their comments, and obviously where the ongoing discussions on the regional park policy are. The other three, again, I think we need to have a little bit more discussion about those. So let's kind of walk through those individually. Fee and lieu revisions. So again, at the last meeting, you provided great comments back, and it kind of changed. And think about this as a series of progressions through the different levels of how you handle a facility when it comes through Planning Commission to you. The obvious one for you, and obviously your top priority is always to build the facility. If you're not able to build the facility for some reason, then you move to those next two layers. So fee and lieu is kind of that middle tier of that cake, without the ice cream, cake, in terms of what we have. And we talked about this based on your comments, and the trigger is that term technically feasible. And this is going to put a lot of onus on the fellow to my right here, Mr. Franson. But the first trigger in terms of meeting eligibility, you must meet one of the three that we have lined up here to even be eligible for the fee and lieu. One, the facility proves to be difficult to construct. We've seen that. Site constraints, whatever they are, make a project difficult. But in the opinion of the engineer, the project is not technically infeasible. It's kind of a double negative, I recognize. So what we're saying there is you can build it. It's a bear, but you can build it. It's not insurmountable. The second is the distance to connect to existing and planned facilities is significant. And again, there's obviously thresholds there. And the construction of the facility is severely cost prohibitive to the project due to any of the aforementioned reasons. We do make a note in this section, and it would carry to, what I would envision carrying to ordinance, is that cost alone is not justification to trigger the fee and lieu. However, it could be considered in context with the other two. So really it's a two threshold with cost as a third potential factor weighing in here. That's how we're envisioning fee and lieu working. If the project is feasible, but it's a bear to build, or it's kind of located out in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't have a lot of benefit in terms of connectivity, fee and lieu could be triggered. And what do we mean by fee and lieu? We talked about the fee structure last time. There is a revision to that. $60 per square yard for construction remains. That's we were comfortable with that number. But based on the discussion with council at the last meeting, we recognized that there probably needed to be a little bit of an addition for incidentals, things like the tree root guards that we discussed in terms of facility design requirements, drainage, other things. So we added a $5 per square yard incidental cost. The rest of this remains the same as you saw it before. So really the only change is that addition of $5 per square yard. I'll stop there for fee and lieu. Did we hit the mark in terms of fee and lieu? And obviously thinking about that kind of as that mid-tier of those three alternatives you have when considering facilities. Did we hit your comments from the last meeting?
Eric, start us out, please.
Yeah, this is tough. To me, the details of fee and lieu are less important if the choice is build it or fee and lieu. It just seems to me there'll be less of a debate and argument over it. Because most of the time, what we're seeing is people just trying to get out from under it altogether. Not only building it, but paying anything for it. So to me, it depends how detailed we get into the fee and lieu language depends more on what we're going to set as waiver requirements.
Yeah, and we'll get there.
So I can't really, I don't want to critique the fee and lieu until I see how easy, you understand what I'm
Yeah,
coming from?
understood, and maybe, I don't know, Mr. Chair, looking at you, would it be best if we just talk about waivers, and then we can kind of look at
Let's
it as
do
a whole
that.
picture?
Yep.
Okay.
So that they're connected.
No, I
Yeah,
absolutely agree.
and great comment, Eric, and I
Yep.
probably should have known better. In terms of waivers,
You're
again,
a short timer.
you know, get rid of him.
Stuck
No
around.
cake and ice cream for you.
That's right, get rid of him,
tried.
toss him out of here. In terms of waivers, again, that third tier, and the one that we realistically don't want to use, and I think there's a recognition amongst council, and we actually say that in the plan, that it's not kind of your wish to utilize waivers. But again, it's three factors that we look at, and this is where we get into utilizing the project matrix, and I think that was a comment that came out of you, Carla, at the last meeting. So the first one is, it's technically infeasible. If the engineer looks at it and says, just based on site constraints, you cannot build this thing. At that point, we would ask the applicant to supply us with a technical and feasible waiver request to the township, as those boxes you have to check in terms of providing proof that it's not technically feasible. And again, the guy to my right is going to kind of hold the keys to a lot of that as he looks at it in his engineering judgment between, you know, slicing it feasible, infeasible.
Well, anything's possible. Sorry.
I think
Yeah.
Don has said that. If you throw enough money at it.
It can be done.
The second piece, and this gets at Carla's point, which I thought was great at the last meeting, was utilizing the project prioritization matrix to kind of establish some of that threshold. And looking at that and the revisions that you'll see shortly on the matrix, any proposed facility that scores 10 or less, in our eyes, from the way the matrix kind of scores things out based on the criteria, is one of those projects that really does not have a huge community benefit. And at that point, you know, okay, you can consider it a waivable project. So, case in point, the most recent one that we tackled, the Coons property, I forget the street. I said it wrong when we met. Penzie Street. We did run this, had Shane run it through a test, and we actually tested a pretty good number of projects. I think that scored out at like a 3. It just, you know, it was a dog project, essentially. It's not going to really do anything to benefit the larger community in terms of connectivity. That, you know, you waived that when it came through. Based on this criteria, you'd have waived it again, because it just didn't meet the needs. And then the last threshold is that the proposed facility is on a parcel located outside the regional growth boundary and provides no or redundant connectivity to an existing or proposed network within the regional growth boundary. So if it's setting outside the regional growth boundary in College Township and really is a path to no connectivity within the heart of the township in the regional growth boundary, you can waive it. Those are the 3 tiers. So, and I apologize, Eric, I should have kind of done that process you alluded to. So that gives you more of the complete picture of what this process looks like in our eyes. Build it if you can. If it's feasible, you build it. It's required by the ordinance. If it's infeasible or it hits one of those other thresholds, you can waive it. And if it's in the middle, that's where fee and lieu comes in play. Now we'll stop.
Eric, back to you.
Well, let me work backwards from 3. I'm okay with the regional growth boundary because we put so much else on that. You know, that's our arms around development. So I'm okay with 3. On number 2, you know, it almost to me seems like 2 should kick, if you don't get the 10, it should kick it back to fee and lieu. Or, you know, maybe we potentially have 2 numbers, you know, and I would leave it up to staff to figure out what they are. Because I'm a big matrix guy, I like using the matrix whenever possible. So maybe if 10 is legit, or maybe it's something like 4 for waiver, but 10 for fee in lieu.
Yeah.
I just like fee in lieu, and I like the objectivity of that. At least it's subjective when you create the criteria, but then the process is more objective. And number one, I'd have to understand the difference between number one on waivers and number one on the slide before that. If you could just quickly just tell me what.
I'm going to turn to the guy on my right here, kind of where he splits the hairs in terms of feasible and infeasible.
Yeah, because see, that's where I'm a little, are you okay with that? I mean, are you okay that,
Well, even the language, I mean, this one is technically infeasible, and the other one is not technically infeasible.
yeah, see, I don't know that I could sort through that.
Well, they're opposite.
Okay.
Well, this would be, it just, there's no way you can build one. Whereas the other one is, yes, you can build it, but it's gonna be an awful lot of money.
Okay, that helps. Then my comment would be, you could have a situation where it really is needed, but you technically can't build it, and to me, in my heart, that would justify fee in lieu. Because you're the one who decided to develop the site on a piece of property that requires a sidewalk, but the sidewalk's technically, I don't want to give them a free pass on that. So I guess my comment, and I'll leave it at that, is I don't like the fact that technically, they'd only have to meet technically infeasible. They don't have to meet one of those. And technically infeasible gets you completely off the hook, even if you're in the middle of the growth boundary and it's absolutely needed, and you don't even have to pay fee in lieu. So that would be my heartburn over only having to meet one of them and one of them being technically infeasible.
Well, would you have something like technically infeasible and scores less than
Yes.
5?
Yeah.
Because
Then it's a waiver.
Or 15.
My heartburn is only
Technically
meeting
infeasible,
one.
but scores 22, then it's fee in lieu.
So would it be, must be 2 for eligibility?
Mike, it might be helpful, I know you mentioned the example already about Hensley,
Yep.
but you and Shane have gone through and scored a number
Right.
of the waivers that we have granted and actually some of the other projects. And most recently, we scored the Millbrook Marsh sidewalk,
Right.
right? And based on the matrix that is in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that scored a 14.
Yeah, I believe it was 12 or 14.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. Those two were the ones that we looked at in terms of the pivot point.
Right.
You know, some of the others, we recognize that, okay, they fall below that 10 threshold. So the Marsh, I think it scored a 12 or a 13, and the other was actually Lifelink. And again, same corridor. Lifelink scored a 14.
Okay.
So, you know, they're right there. Like I said, 10 seemed to be the pivot point. We could go up or down with that. Honestly, that number's a little arbitrary. I understand exactly what you're saying, Eric, and to your point, maybe the simple solution is it must meet 2 of these
Or
criteria.
1 and 2,
Yeah.
or 3.
Right.
Something like that.
1 and
That
2
would
or 1
make
and
me a lot
3.
happier, because
Well, and-
1 is a free pass. You could be right in a place where we absolutely need the sidewalk, but, you know, out here at the corner of Hauserville Road, across from the old Sheets, Hauserville and East College Avenue, that would be pretty, I guess that would be technically infeasible. But it clearly is warranted there, given what we're trying to do, you know, with this. So, yeah, maybe something like 1 and 2 or 3, I would be happy.
Sure.
Okay. You good, Eric? Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it well. To make that threshold 1 and one of the following 2, either one of the following 2 or both, whatever that happened to be. I personally, you know, 10 seems a little high if 27 is the max. I mean, that would, you know, be something that, and I'm wondering, can we go back to the fee in lieu? Back one more there. I like Eric's suggestion of using the matrix here too.
Okay.
Because, you know, we're starting to sort of get at the distance to connection, the constraints, cost prohibitive, all those kind of things. I'd like to, if we have the matrix, let's use the matrix. And I do like that idea of trying to keep it a continuum, because I do think if you're above a certain number, whatever that number happens to be, that puts you in eligibility for the fee in lieu, potentially. That's, am I characterizing what you were trying to say? I mean, I would rather not, I'd rather, for consistency's sake,
that's
because
fine.
otherwise, we may get into a situation where we begin debating
Sure.
with, you know, the developer, well, which is it? These are mutually incompatible or something like that. So, anyway, that would be my comments, but otherwise, I think it looks great. I mean, I like the prioritization matrix. I think, you know, the thresholds, whatever those are, whatever we decide they are good. I just wouldn't want to set it too lenient, because we want these.
Right.
Could I ask a
Yes.
clarifying question?
Sure.
And I guess this is probably from Mike. If we were going to use the matrix, would there be any, is it the same matrix? Is it a modified matrix? Just, and I know that we probably need to think about it and talk it through a little bit, but
Sure.
just off the top of your head.
Yeah, I think you could use the same matrix. You know, obviously, whatever you set as your threshold for the waiver, essentially anything above that becomes your threshold for fee in lieu. So
Becomes
it
a
could
de facto
score
floor for the.
11 to 27 if it's, you know, if it's a challenging project. Then, you know, particularly the higher up it goes, that's where fee in lieu becomes even more important, in my opinion.
Right.
So, yeah, I think you could use it because of the way that criteria, and we'll get to it in a minute, the way that criteria is structured now deals more with community context. So it's an importance to the community as opposed to thresholds to certain features within the community. So, yeah, I think you could probably utilize the same one.
And if I might, I'm flipping this around. I'm thinking of it, the threshold has to be high to qualify for a waiver requirement. So, you know, we're almost thinking of it in reverse. I want to set that bar, it's a difficult bar to clear.
Okay.
Or to get under. It's more like,
So it's a low number.
It's a low
yeah,
number.
So you're thinking something under 10, you know,
Yes.
7 or something like that. That's, you know, you have to get down to that point to be eligible for a waiver. I'll be honest, the threshold that we set was really based upon the scoring of a couple key projects in those waivers. The one that I can tell you is kind of a gray area one, and I'll share this example, was the Burger King. That one came in
Thinking of that one too.
under 10.
Yep.
It scored a 9.
Yep.
Interesting.
So, you know, sitting in your seats now, you know, I think that one you negotiated out an alternative with them.
Yes.
Is that the one you want to set as your pivot point? Anything below 9? Again, it's your little small increments, but I completely understand. It's a question of where do you draw that line to open that, you know, opening up for waivers, and it depends how restrictive you want to get.
Yeah, the criteria that is being used as part of the matrix, as you score these projects out, I mean, I was a little bit flabbergasted that a key element or a key section of the path to campus
Got a
scored a 12 out of 27.
Yeah.
yeah.
So my point here is that even though we've identified these rational criteria and that we're utilizing them, some of these things don't score out in the overall perhaps as high as what we think.
Right, and one thing I can lend, I'm sorry, Eric, I don't mean to step on your point there. There's still, I think, room for tweaking the way that criteria, because this was run through the GIS. So what it probably looked at in order for it to score a little bit lower than expected. So Millbrook and Lifelink, it's a product of the frontage, I think is the way Shane described it. If we tweak that a little bit, I think you see the scores on those start to elevate. And again, that's the GIS, this is strictly based on a GIS number. This has not been really cross-checked by staff. I'll be honest, Adam, I was a little surprised they scored that low too. I was figuring they were gonna be, pushing 20, somewhere in that 17, 18 range. So I think there's still, it's still probably not locked down as tight as it needs to be. But again, we're trying to get to something that
And
takes
again,
some of the
going back to our
subjectivity out of it.
living document,
Yep,
the more of these that we run through it, the better, we're gonna know to hone those. It's a hell of a lot better than what we have currently.
sure.
Yeah. So Eric, if you had a follow-up.
Quickly, yeah. I was going to say this when we got to the criteria. We kind of got ahead of ourselves here. We're talking about these things not meeting the criteria, but I think that tells us that we need to revisit the criteria.
Sure.
And I think if, I was going to talk about this when we got to it. I think we've kind of given all of those lines equal weight. And we probably ought to use some of those examples and change the weighting of the criteria so that those do meet the number.
Yeah, where we would like to see them, we believe they're best.
Yeah, so
for
I'd be
the township.
careful passing any judgment on the samples that we've given on this criteria, because I think the criteria needs more work. The weighting of the criteria. Criteria is fine.
Yes.
But the weighting needs more work.
Yeah, good point. Paul, anything else on that? No. Great, thank you. Carla?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna jump in. I'm not gonna give all the outside comments. So, just to bounce immediately off of what Eric said, I agree with the weighting. I like the idea of a weighted approach, so to work out some of those, but I disagree that the criteria is fine. I really like that you pulled out the quarter mile to a mile to a half a mile, but now we're looking at, I think, if you could help me understand it, we're looking at full connections versus partial connections?
Yeah, and maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of move into the criteria. And
Oh,
again,
so that's not what we're discussing, sorry.
Yeah,
I can back up.
No,
that's
let's not go into the criteria.
Okay, sorry, got it, back up. Okay, so, one question back to, right, we're talking about fee and lieu and waivers. Okay, the one thing that neither of these touches on is the alternate route conversation, and we have had a lot of awesome success with alternate route. So I just want to make sure we don't lose that in this. Yeah, so just throwing that into the
And
conversation.
I do think that's, if it's not, it needs to be referenced in the plan about, exhausting the alternative routes.
Exactly.
Yes,
With the
exactly.
infeasibility.
Sure.
Yeah, infeasibility and
Yeah.
no
This
alternate
alignment
route.
may be infeasible, but if you
Yeah,
go this way.
Well, this is what
And
the
this would
ordinance.
be acceptable. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so then the other piece that I really want to hone in on as we're coming up with waivers and fee and lieu and the criteria is, like Joe Johnson and his house project, right? And he's in a neighborhood that has no sidewalks, doesn't need sidewalks, never had sidewalks, never will have sidewalks, right?
Unless it's a public project. yes.
Unless, right, so I just want to make sure he waivers out. I don't think he should I don't personally think he should have to pay a fee in lieu. I think this is, I'm just concerned about Joe Johnson.
Yeah, that's where you run into the tripping point with moving waivers to meeting two of the criteria.
Exactly.
If, in that instance, Carla, so if Joe's property is in a neighborhood that doesn't have any ability for connectivity, it's probably going to score relatively low on the criteria. And if that's the case,
But it's still feasible.
it's still feasible. It may be perfectly flat, easy to build, but is it important to the community? That's the tripping hazard of tying it to two criteria. So, it's kind of a measured decision at that point. Do you get more restrictive or less restrictive on how you deal with waivers? And that's a decision for you. Yeah.
Well, if I may, we're talking about using the matrix and the scoring
Right.
as a tool.
Sure.
It's not the end-all, be-all. In other words, I think council still has the ability to utilize discretion. And it should, in my opinion, it should be clear that council always has the ability to exercise discretion with respect to a waiver. So you could still use 2 criteria to make a determination relative to fee in lieu, provided it's very clear that if Joe Johnson, whoever we were
Yeah, that's
talking
my
about.
fictional
yeah,
character.
If
I'm given
Joe
like a
Johnson
soul,
presents with
bank
that
account.
particular scenario, that regardless, I mean, he may only ever meet one of these criteria, you're not gonna, there's no reason to build this, and council has the latitude to execute
To
on
waive
that,
that.
to waive it,
Without setting some sort
without
of
setting
precedent.
any kind of
or-
a precedent.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just want to keep that in mind. And maybe council doesn't agree with that. That's just, I mean, that's just kind of something that I feel strongly about, so.
Yeah, I think, to Adam's point, to your point, you know, if we can't cover every absolute scenario that's gonna come before councils for decades and everything. So we need that always get out of jail free card kind of thing. So I do understand the point. Anything on these?
Yeah, like Eric, I too found one slightly uncomfortable, number 1 here. But, yeah, I guess I just need to kind of, like, think about it a little while. And again, with everything, I'm really interested to hear how it comes through planning commission. I feel like they'll be able to really get into the nitty gritty on this stuff. Well, you'll have a chance, you'll have your chance at it.
Yeah,
It's coming to you.
I would say there's one who would have to meet one of the other 2.
Sure. Anything else on?
No, that's enough for now, thank you.
Okay, thanks. The only ones that I had, Mike, were, I agree, the 2-tier potential, and it could be one's the ceiling of one and one's the floor of the other, however it works, right? Really like the alternate route, the discussion being included in there. Really like the council discretion, I mean, we need to have that in there. The one verbiage that I had a little concern with was under the fee in lieu number 2, when we're saying the distance is significant.
Yeah, adjectives are different, are dangerous here.
Yeah, interpretations of significant and everything. I don't know if there's any.
Well, and perhaps, going back to, sorry, Rich, I don't mean to jump in there.
Please.
Perhaps going back to that, tying it down with consistency, that the criteria, or the matrix element replaces 2, that if it scores above
Yeah.
this,
Because distance is
that's-
included in the matrix.
it ties it back to,
Yes.
again, something, a little less subjectivity.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes, yeah, I think.
That's a tough word.
I think that's a good fix.
That's what
Yeah.
I was trying to.
Yeah, I think that's a good fix. Anything else before we unleash Mike again? Oh,
Well,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say also, I think that, no alternative routing is available is a really good addition. So just to third what you were saying, I mean, I just think Millbrook Marsh is a great example.
Sure.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we just saw it
Burger
tonight.
King?
Burger King.
Burger King?
Yeah.
Okay, so several of these.
Sure. Okay.
Eric, did
Yeah,
you
I
have
just,
something else?
I should say that I should be clearer. I have some comments on the criteria.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I said I'm fine with the criteria, I'm fine with the criteria approach.
Sure.
But when we
Gotcha.
get
Yep.
to it.
I was on the
Yep.
wrong topic, that's
Yep.
my bad.
Yep,
I see
Yeah.
some redundancy and some discussion there when we get there.
right, that's why I said we're gonna unleash Mike again and see where we're headed
Are
next.
you sure you want to do that?
Hey, I don't have to be anywhere till midnight, you know what I mean?
Okay.
luck getting there.
Before we get to the criteria, in terms of official map recommendations, this is what is incorporated right now. The one that you talked about previously, removing the current official map bike pedestrian path near Bollesburg Road that kind of cuts through the private property, with the potential to have that replaced with on-road bike lanes or something of that nature, something that's tied more towards Bollesburg Road get you off of the private property. So that remains, and we did hear those comments, and that language is included now in the draft plan. The first one, going back to our investment corridors, it's my recommendation that you incorporate those identified priority and secondary investment corridors as official map designated bike pedestrian paths. Again, the alignment is what will, what it may be in the future, but by putting those on the official map, at least you're designating these are important corridors to you as a council to see something built on. And again, it just gives you the weight of the official map behind that.
Mike, to clarify, to put it on the official map, they would just be corridors.
Yes.
They wouldn't be identified as primary or priority and secondary.
Right, yeah.
Just confirm it.
They kind of blend together at that point,
Yeah.
I put a
They don't
separate-
need to know that
yeah.
whether there are, and we may change it over time.
Yeah, they're only set that way to define what they were
Understood.
in the plan, but
Understood.
yeah, when it moves to an official map, it's a
It's
line on
just
the
a
paper.
corridor.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You just.
Yeah,
need
I'll stop there and just,
confirmation
yeah, just
of this, Paul?
Yeah, I was the one who wanted to make sure we got something on Bollesburg Road, so I'm very
Good.
happy with that.
Carlo?
Sounds good.
Yep, just putting the line on the official map's gonna draw a room full of people, so you don't need to be any more specific than that.
Cool.
All righty. This is really hard to see on here, so we probably have to refer to your memo. We did, make some updates. I heard loud and clear at the last meeting, the thresholds were uncomfortable, and I agree. They were a little arbitrary. So this is my swing at trying to address that and actually expand it a little bit. I agree with Eric's earlier comment. There is probably some redundancy in this that could be accounted for with weighting. But this is our first shot at it. So just for the folks at home that may have some trouble seeing this, the categories, it's a 27-point scoring system, 9 individual criteria. The first is project system type, and it's defined just by those systems that we talked about in the plan. Core, secondary, feeder, and I identified greenway as well. Closure of an existing system gap, if it achieves a full closure of a gap, highest score. Partial closure gives you a partial score. No gap, but improves the condition, you get 1, and if there's no closure or condition improvement, it's a 0. Connection to a neighborhood type. If it connects underserved or multiple neighborhoods, that's your high score. If it connects to a well-served neighborhood, that's your mid-tier score. Partial connection to any neighborhood, you get a point, and if it provides no connection, it's a 0. Connection to commercial areas, same thing. It's tied back to neighborhoods. Connection to parks and schools, again, tied back to neighborhood is how the scoring is set up. Connection to a transit stop. The facility being proposed includes a new or improved transit stop, provides a direct connection to existing stop, partial connection, kind of that's your tiers. Adjacent roadway classification, again, going back to how the core system was identified, a lot of it's tied back to the roadways that it's adjacent to. So if it's adjacent to an arterial street, highest score, and then working down the tiers. This is probably where one of those areas of redundancy comes in. If it's adjacent to an arterial or a collector and there are pedestrian facilities present. If there's no facilities, the thought process is you're along a high volume road and you have no facilities for safe movement of pedestrians, that's where you get points. And then again, it kind of moves down from there. Presence of shoulder on the adjacent roadway, again, thinking that separation of moving pedestrians away from vehicle traffic, having a shoulder provides you a little gap. So if there's no shoulder, you're at your highest scores. So those are the tiers, or I'm sorry, the criteria that were identified. It did wipe thresholds out, but I was curious to hear your thoughts on where we stand. And I have heard the comment on weighting, so I think with any of this stuff, I've been through this enough with long-range transportation plan in my past life that let's tweak it. Let's make it work. And what's most important to you should have the heaviest weighting. And again, that may be something that we don't necessarily vet out here, but we assign to Planning Commission as part of their work, is to take this criteria and kind of ratchet it down, fine tune it, and get it to the point where it meets the intent that council would like it to meet.
Can I ask a question? Follow-up question? I'm sorry if I missed it. So all the connection froms, those are full connections?
Yeah, that's the intent of the first two. If you're providing a full connection to a neighborhood, if you only get part way, then you get a lower score.
Okay, thank you.
And by the connection, are you saying the entire neighborhood or a portion of the neighborhood or?
As long as it touches it. As long as it, again, think about it in terms of providing access. As long as you're touching that neighborhood and someone
Okay.
can work their way
Okay.
through it to get to
Very
that
good.
point,
Thanks.
I feel it checks the box.
Good.
But it has to touch the neighborhood and the commercial area, or touch the neighborhood and the school,
Right.
which just seems like an impossible property.
Understood.
Yeah,
If you're, again, that's where I think this is open to interpretation. If we want to tweak that,
right.
now's the time.
Sure. Ready for us?
Sure.
Okay. Carla, lead us out, please.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Okay, so just initial thoughts off the top of my head. The shoulder one, if we're doing weighting, I would say the shoulder gets a lower weight. There's all kinds of, dirt roads don't have shoulders, but they're also really nicely walkable. So, it's hard for me to weight those. I would almost even take them out maybe.
Sure.
But especially because shoulders aren't maintained, and when you're biking down College Ave on a nice wide shoulder, it's filled with broken glass, it's filled with garbage, it's filled with all kinds of things. So anyway, I don't love the shoulder criteria. Okay. Closure of existing system gap, I think maybe that's one of the redundant things. I'm not sure, maybe that Eric was thinking of. I almost think full closure is, whether it's full or partial, like, we're judging how big or long their property is, and I'm not interested in judging that. If your property only touches the main road for, 50 feet or whatever, great. It doesn't need to be a great, huge, sprawling property to fill a gap, in my mind. As long as it's a partial closure, I think that's a 3.
Okay.
In my idea. So,
Contributes towards the closure.
yeah, right. I'm not sure everything needs to go 3, 2, 1. You might just have an on and an off switch for some of them. Or a 3, 1, 0, or I don't know. Or however you want to weight it.
It's de facto weighting.
Yeah. So, and then it's the same thing in my mind for the connection to commercial areas and parks and schools and transit stops. I can think of a couple of times we've not made, like, there have been some property situations where, like, all they had to do was put like 20 feet of path and we would have made that connection, and that was really, would have been awesome. But I think most properties aren't like that, I guess, aren't gonna make that full connection. So again, as long as it's a partial connection, like, we gotta start somewhere. I don't wanna weight down a partial connection and then never be able to make the full connection. A partial connection is as important as a full connection, so.
I guess let me throw this out here as a potential solution to that. Okay, if you take the connection piece out and tie it back to system type, does that help? So if you're filling, even if partial filling of a core system gap, you get a 3. If you're, you're contributing to filling the gap on a secondary, you get your 2. On a local, you get your 1. And if you're not contributing at all, or it's not along one of those systems, it's a 0. Does that move the needle?
Yeah, that
Okay.
moves the needle for me, I think. I mean, but then, I don't know, what do you guys think? Like, you'd think the core is used by the most people, right? But feeder, second, but maybe not. Feeders are probably used by more than cores often.
I mean, cores are critical to move you through the system.
From one huge end to another, right?
So those are your maximum touch points, right? But the feeder systems are the ones that.
You walk your dog on.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
Well, yeah, I think.
Secondaries too.
Just contribute to the connection of the parks or schools.
Yep.
Doesn't care about the system, how it's doing it.
Yeah, right.
Just that it's doing
Yeah,
it.
that's your on and off switch,
Yeah.
to use your point. Okay.
Yeah, is it
That's-
contributing
That's
to
that's
that?
completely fine.
to
This
that.
this is a little bit of a product of me being me and trying to keep it consistent.
Is this how your brain works?
Yeah, so, but no, the idea of an on-off switch, to Rich's point, becomes kind of your de facto weighting. That's obviously going to impact the previous discussion we had on those thresholds of where the criteria falls, or I'm sorry, where the number falls in terms of waivers and fee and lieu. But I understand better now, sorry.
You
it
see
took me
where
a
we're
minute.
going.
Yep.
You see where we're
Took me a
going.
minute.
Or if it's just 3 and 0. right?
Or 1 and 0, depending
Yeah,
on,
one and zero.
Yeah, depending on what
Yeah.
you're waiting.
No.
or every connection to
binary.
a school, park,
Yeah.
or commercial area, or transit stop gets a 1,
Yep.
and then if you have none of them, you have a 0,
Sure.
or something.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And that's, the facilities present on both sides with no gaps, so I'm in the second to last. If adjacent to an arterial or collector, or any pedestrian facilities present. Facilities present on both sides with no gaps doesn't mean that there's already sidewalks? Or no? I mean, that's how I read it.
Yeah, that.
Which-
I don't particularly like that criteria. It's kind of a carryover from the original plan.
Okay, like I crossed it out on mine as
That
a
one in the
suggested.
shoulders, I'll be honest, if you want to axe those, I wouldn't have heartburn.
Does that mean like a shared use path or something that is just off the arterial or collector?
Yeah, again, of all the criteria, that's the one I'm probably the least comfortable with.
And your
so.
definition of facilities, that would be critical too. Any others?
No, that's it, thank you.
Right. Paul?
I think Carla hit on all of them. I mean, I was sort of seeing this through the lens of the barriers, I think, to kind of paraphrase what Adam was saying, like, what are those connections? And I wasn't sure about including greenways in this, that just.
I can eliminate it if you.
Yeah, I'm not sure we should.
Sure.
Because if it makes a connection, then it shouldn't be.
Why don't we
so-
go around and get thoughts on that? Greenways?
What
yes,
is,
no?
what is a greenway?
The intent, and really we only utilize it in the plan in one spot, is Pike Street. As you move past Dale Street and trying to get to College Avenue, the thought process was, okay, if we can't make a direct connection or we can't do that alternative route, perhaps there's a way to do a greenway. And the thought process with a greenway is, it's something better than nothing.
Would that be captured under alternates, maybe?
Yeah,
But what is it?
It's very passive. It would be it's a
No hard
connection
structures.
Is
that
it
the
just like
public
a
can
grass
use.
path?
But yeah,
kind of?
but
Like,
there's
Okay.
which
no
could be a
maintenance. It's
power line,
passive.
right?
Or
That's
like
kind of what I
Yeah,
was
power
thinking.
line would
through
be
the
a good
mountain,
example.
that way.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, I was kind of
Good
thinking of the
path.
power line through like Thompson Woods or something like that, if it wasn't developed as a path.
Yeah, I
Would
mean,
that be?
that would be, in theory, the type of greenway that, I mean, it is.
Technically, the Millbrook Marsh Bridge to the Puddintown Bike Path, right?
At the moment, that's correct.
Okay, so the question now, thank you, is,
The greenway, whether to include or disinclude greenway, or is greenway able to be?
I don't think of
Factored
Greenway
into-
as, I think of us as trying to be as accessible as possible, and I don't see greenways as accessible, so I'm
Very
okay.
good point.
I'm okay having them on a map maybe, but not,
Sure.
Yeah, maybe not as part of the criteria, but,
Right.
and I do like the weighting, by the way, just to go back to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, just on the greenway, just on greenway.
Is that, the question is, do we want greenway in the criteria?
Yeah,
And the consensus so far is no?
that was kind of what I was hearing.
Yeah, because it's really not a year-round facility, it's informal.
Yes, and we're trying to formalize.
Yeah, they're nice, and I think we deal with them.
Absolutely. Rails and
On the
trails,
side,
but even those are
Yeah.
for them. Plus, a lot of them are through private property.
Yes.
A lot of times.
The one I
so-
use the most is the best example, and that's where I'm coming from, so that's
Yeah.
why I just assumed.
Not, okay.
And that's fine.
Okay, so you're
yeah.
clear on that?
You know, honestly, it was in the plan, so I was like, I should probably
Yep.
account for it, but
Yep.
I'm fine taking it out.
Okay, good.
With that rationale.
Paul, continue, you had more, right?
No, it was just the comment, I do like the binary system, but not necessarily a 1 and a 0. It might be a higher number,
Sure.
just to account for the matrix number, the threshold. So that was all I had, thank you.
Cool. Eric?
Yeah, I know what you're looking for, and the temptation is to sit here and say, I think these should be higher priorities and these should be higher priorities, but what I'd rather do is toss out the possibility of some formatting changes that I think would capture a lot of the comments.
Okay.
For example, you know, I mentioned redundancy. Instead of saying, you know, you could say, well, if it's a core, it's probably going to serve a commercial area, serve a transit stop, so you're really piling on. If it's a core, you're going to get a disproportionately higher score. So my suggestion in that particular case would be maybe we have subcategories, or we have, if it's, like we talked about, you get an additional 1 instead of a 3. In other words, if it's a core, you don't get as much credit for connecting to a commercial area or a school as you would possibly under a secondary.
Extra credit?
Because those things are automatically built in.
Yeah,
If you're on the core, guess what's on the core?
Yeah,
Shopping centers, you know, those kinds of things. So I think so the suggestion is that maybe you have subcategories, you have fewer categories, but some of these that are redundant get folded up underneath the main category and maybe just get an extra point, or we talked about the switch on or off, something like that. The shoulder width thing, I do have to comment on that because that's kind of an example here. I would be very much opposed to seeing it come off. And the reason is that it's an alternate. You know, I think shoulder width is really important in deciding, in scoring these, if using the criteria 5 and 4, because let's say it's on a core and you have 5 feet of shoulder width, but it's in a residential neighborhood where you have 5. Well, that's a lot more appealing of an alternative, a 5-foot shoulder on a local street than it is on 322 where people are going 65 miles an hour, but under this, they're given equal weight. You know, so instead of throwing it out, maybe we weight them, again, subcategories. If it's under the core, then maybe it needs to be 10 feet. You know, I'm just tossing these out. So the point here is that instead of naming a bunch of things that I think should be priorities, maybe we just suggest to Planning Commission to feel free to fold some of these under other categories and then change the weight accordingly. Like using the example, I'd like to see shoulders stay in, but I think a shoulder on a road where people are traveling 55 miles an hour needs to be a little wider. Where I think 3 or 4 feet would be adequate on a residential street, it sure as heck isn't adequate on 322. 5 feet's not.
But either way, they need, well, yeah.
Well, they represent an opportunity. You know, if you have the shoulder, you have an opportunity to do some things.
Yeah, but
If you
what I'm
don't-
saying is,
No, I understand what you're saying.
the opportunity is not as attractive.
Right.
A 5-foot opportunity on 322 is not as
Right.
attractive.
You get less points on
Right,
those. but
exactly.
On the
So-
lower ones, or the more desirable ones, you'd have more points available under those subcategories.
Yeah.
On those type of,
So in some cases, the shoulder would go away as a criteria, because honestly,
Yeah.
you only need 2
It's not a
feet.
value, yeah.
It's not an issue, but if it's on 322, I think you need 10 feet
Sure.
to get any points, or
Sure.
to get the lower points.
Paul, did you have a follow-up on that?
Yeah, I just,
I think if,
I'm, this is one of the challenges of when you start to create a matrix with a bunch of numbers on it. Sometimes you get down into the weeds of it. Pulling back a little bit, I see two reasons to utilize a matrix. One is to decide the relative value of two projects. Which one should we put our money into? And that's one way to use this prioritization. The other way is to provide a floor or a ceiling, to your point earlier. I think we can get into the weeds on this in a way that isn't terribly helpful and may actually backfire on us.
Right.
I agree.
And so, you know, I think maybe we just need to rethink whether we should invest a lot of time and energy into parsing this so finely to capture everything, when really all we're looking for is to set that floor. It's a limbo, not a high jump, is the kind of the way I was thinking of it, right? Like, if you can get under this bar, then come talk to us. But if you can't, that's all we need to know. And then the discretion of council could be, we could use this between us to say, you know, we should make this connection or that connection. I think that's where I see the value of it. I don't know whether, I'm just throwing that out there.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, you know, listening to the discussion and everything that's been mentioned around the table, I think has merit tonight. Kind of my takeaway from what I heard is we're not comfortable with, 100% comfortable with where this is at. We like the idea of using it, and we recognize that it needs some work, and I'm in agreement with you. So what my suggestion would be is, again, if we can get this to the remand to Planning Commission, before it goes to Planning Commission, staff, and I would probably recommend tagging in someone like a Trish Meek to help give one more shot at a criteria, and then hand it off to Planning Commission and say, take your shot at it. This is the wild idea of essentially one person. So it's a starting point
We all
to
see
get us.
value in it, though,
No, yeah,
right?
and I'm not
we
saying
all
it, you
have,
don't.
and I think but I just don't want us to get too far down into the weeds and lose sight of the direction
I
we're
think it's
headed.
an opportune time to invite other
Yeah.
experienced eyes into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First off, I'm not surprised you said you were gonna invite Trish to participate. But that said, the other thing to keep in mind here is you're potentially using this to accomplish at least a couple of different things. Okay, of course, you're trying to score out an individual project to see, as Paul said, does it meet the test or does it not meet the test? You know, is it the high bar versus the low bar? But the other thing that you're doing, potentially using this for, is you're establishing your priorities
Yeah.
about where and what you're valuing relative to a pedestrian plan. And I think it's just important to keep that in mind, because if, in fact, to Paul's point, that we ratchet that, you know, tighten these screws down too much, you may lose some of that. Not necessarily, but I mean, there is some potential for that. I think it's just important to recognize that the matrix is designed to do probably some multiple things here.
If I might phrase it as, we don't want to lose the art for the science of it, in a sense too, because that's kind of,
It's very artful.
Yeah.
That's deep, Paul.
thank you. I was trying, you know, I knew I wasn't gonna get cake or ice cream
Well
for
done.
it, so I figured I'd have some virtual cake.
Eric, do you
I don't know, man.
have other points?
Well, yeah, would it be accurate then to say, because I agree, I think that's what I was trying to say, is the message of Planning Commission is we're not opposed to there being fewer criteria as long as those are what they feel are the most important. And if some of these get folded into the other ones, fine.
Sure. Well, I think that the goal is that the matrix supports the goal that
Yes.
you started us out with. And if it does that, then we're ready to go. And then going back to the living side, we go through a couple of these and go, that result didn't come out quite the way we want it to. And we go back and visit it.
And that should be part of, I think, their process, is actually plugging in.
Right, well, from between last meeting and this meeting, you did.
Sure.
But I
And-
mean,
and-
more of that.
There you go,
Yeah.
ongoing,
Yes.
ongoing. You know, like I said, well, that didn't work out quite the way we, you know, that worked out exactly the way we.
We've all done that in our
Yeah,
lives.
sure.
And if I might, that's an argument for keeping the bar quite high. Because, you know, we might get to the point where, we're close here and there, then it's worth a conversation with council and discretion, right?
Going back to those Richisms that got thrown at me, it's always easier to lighten up than to tighten up.
There you go, that's what I was channeling you.
That got thrown at me today.
For the record, it's one of my least favorite.
But it's occasionally apropos, and I think.
So it is.
I had nothing, I think a lot was said.
Sure.
And I do believe we're at a point where our best benefit would to be, we're in a pretty small ballpark.
Sure.
And start inviting, other subject matter experts in and try to get us over.
Yeah, kind of where, you know, my jumping off point from this one, and again, I'm allowed to probably invite Trish here a little bit more formally in a couple weeks. But I think, again, to your point, a subject matter expert, you know, you're not gonna find many people better at this stuff than Trish. She can help us move it from where it's at now, which is closer to the goal line than that first set of criteria was, and help it move to the point where, okay, now let's hand it to Planning Commission as part of the remand. Here's this section of the plan, now do your work, and have a bunch of other eyes take a look at it to see if it passes muster before it comes back to you. I think, yeah, to your point, Rich, I do think we're in the ballpark. It's just a question of hitting the criteria the right way, maybe weighting them the right way, using an on-off switch. You know, all of that is well-founded, and I think all good commentary on this. It's getting closer. It's not right yet. So.
Okay. What else?
Staff recommendation. You know, again, even after the discussion tonight, I did not hear any stoppers in terms of this recommendation. So my recommendation to council is to remand the draft pedestrian facilities master plan, obviously with some tweaks that we heard tonight, to College Township Planning Commission for their review, and probably expand a little bit, their review of the plan, of the criteria, of the processes, and to help develop the revised ordinance language to incorporate pedestrian fee in lieu and waiver processes. That's kind of what my last piece tonight, that's a recommendation for you as council to consider. And I think, you know, turning it over to Planning Commission provides another lens to look at before it comes back to you for final approval and then opening up for public comment.
Great. Eric, thoughts on that?
On the staff recommendation? Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't know that we really need to specify the criteria. I mean, it's captured in our discussion. You're going to have a revised criteria with Trish's help before it goes to them anyways. We're all in agreement, right?
Okay.
You could just say for the review and assistance and further development of the.
I'm fine with the way it's
pedestrian
written. I
facilities.
don't know that we need to.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just specifying as part of the review.
Sure.
These are some of the things that are
Well,
probably.
actually, what you provided was very, you know, as you recall, when we developed a process, there's that process where, that the manager issues a remand.
Well, that's
letter.
where I was going.
And so I think, you know, a lot of what you shared would be beneficial to the manager in developing that and everything. But we'll continue, and then we'll finish with you to make sure that you have everything you need should we move forward with the recommendation. Paul, any?
No, I'm very comfortable with this. I think, you know, back to the point, you've put so much into this. None of this is criticism. This is all great stuff, and I just can't wait to get more eyes on it.
And by no means is it taken that way.
Good.
I value and benefit from your commentary on this, so thank you.
He's a thick-skinned lad. Carla?
Well, you better be.
On the right.
None.
Okay, great. Adam, what do you need? Do we need to incorporate anything more for you to do your?
Not at this time, however, I reserve the right to forward a draft of a remand letter to members of council for their review
Oh, dear.
and input.
Fair enough.
That'd be great.
On-
Matter of fact, do
relative
we
to
want
that.
to request that? We'll just request that.
That will be perfectly fine, yes. Thank you.
So, at this point, what I'm hearing is that we're prepared for council to make a motion to remand the draft pedestrian facilities master plan to the College Township Planning Commission.
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there is one thing.
Yes,
I think it's helpful, and I try to do it in most of the remand letters that go to planning commission, to give them some kind of a time frame.
yes.
And I'm pretty sure this isn't necessarily a quick turnaround that council is looking for. Council's looking for thoughtful, insightful kinds of comments to come back out of the planning commission. So you, council, may want to have some discussion relative to what kind of time frame you're thinking would be appropriate for planning commission to reply back.
Gonna break out another Richism. We do things to standard, not to time. When it's right, it's right. But I do think that we could, as a council, we could stress the importance, where in the pecking order we view this as going, and everything. Paul, go ahead.
No, I think to that point, I mean, I think it would be high on that priority matrix, if you will, because we may get a land development plan.
Exactly.
And we don't
Everyone
want to
that
miss
comes
this
is a missed
opportunity.
opportunity.
That's exactly what I was gonna
Yep.
say.
Yep, exactly. Eric?
In general, but not knowing what's in the queue, but in general, absolutely supporting that, because there might be a few other things in the queue that.
Sure.
are
There's
just-
some things that can't be bumped.
Yes.
Well, we've invested so much in this whole process to begin with. I mean,
Right.
from gathering all the public comment and everything else. I mean, this is, by its nature, a very high priority item for us. And I think just maybe mentioning that in the remand letter, I don't know if you're looking for a specific, month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it
I
happens
don't
to
think,
be.
I personally don't think we should give that.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
But I do think we should give an indication of the
Relative
And that's
relative
all.
importance. And, so it's critical, opportunities. We've had a couple projects where we went, God, I wish we'd had a fee in lieu. I wish we'd been able to point to something to say, this is an absolute priority, all those kind of things and stuff. But the other side of it is, just because we're this close, we don't want to rush it. We just to get it done and get it over, we don't want to rush it. There's been too much good work, conscientious work and everything. We want to make sure that the finish matches the beginning and everything. So but
Well,
I
therein
do
lies-
think it is a high priority.
Therein lies the challenge, is
Yeah.
finding that sweet spot.
Yep.
Because as the chair is fond of saying, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, so.
Wow, is anybody writing
Well,
all
that's
these down?
Rich's.
We're gonna have to.
There's
watch this.
nothing this guy has.
We don't need to write them down, they're
t-shirt.
burned in there.
Because we can revise it.
Yes.
That, from my standpoint, that's fine. I would just stress the fact that it's a higher priority.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
I
Ed's
heard
here.
from our-
I think Ed heard us loud and clear.
60 to 90 days, I think, would be reasonable.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was.
Sure.
If I was
Well,
going
that's
to
right.
put a number
Content with
on it.
that.
but-
That's great.
Yeah.
For me to hear that is fantastic.
Well, stuff happens.
Absolutely.
That's another one that comes out. Stuff happens, so it can be bumped and some guy's leaving. But, so, without further ado then, if the manager feels he has enough to move forward with the remand letter, then I would accept the motion based on the staff recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I move to remand the draft pedestrian facilities master plan as amended by consensus tonight to the College Township Planning Commission for their review and assistance in developing the revised ordinance language to incorporate the new pedestrian facility fee and lieu and waiver request process.
Excellent. We have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. At this point, do we have anybody on call?
We
Just
wore them
that.
out, we wore them all out?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We must be doing a good job,
I mean,
right?
Amy's out there, but.
Amy, you got anything for us?
She's sleeping.
All right, stay,
Oh, there she comes.
Nothing from me.
okay, thanks, Amy.
She's there.
All right, then we'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Excellent. Well done, staff. Well done, council. Great stuff.
I
Great
hope
stuff.
you got your dollar's worth out of me tonight. So, thank you, I appreciate that, and like I said, we'll do a little work here before it goes to planning commission, and wish them well on their work, so, thank you all.
We have no new business for this evening. Staff informatives, Mr. Manager, anything you want to bring to our attention?
The only thing that I did neglect to just point out to council, in the manager update, we do have a zoning hearing board decision that was included there. Nothing in particular, but I just wanted to be sure that I drew your attention to that.
Those are always interesting. Our zoning hearing board rarely takes action, but when they do, they do a very, very good job.
That was all I had.
Excellent. Council staff, other matters. Council, anyone? Mr. Take.
I have one, thank you, Mr. Chair. As some of you know, Carla and I have been attending as often as we can the Campus and Community and Unity meetings and the Anti-Bias Coalition and, you know, some of the other meetings in town that are focused on diversity and equity and inclusion. And the suggestion has been made that we may want to follow the lead of other municipalities. State College Borough, I know Ferguson is looking at it too.
Half Moon just did it.
Half Moon, okay, great. So, to implement a standing diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda item. As I say, others have done this. It's really to kind of keep residents aware of issues that arise in the community regarding inequality, bias, hate crimes, complaints, those kind of things. And some of the examples of the content might be things like updates on the State College Borough Community Oversight Board, right, which would have a direct impact on College Township, of course, as our police force. Acknowledge affinity months, whether that's like Black History Month or Women's Month or something like that, and any kind of updates or takeaways from participation in those other organizations that I mentioned. So I wanted to bring this up as a potential, I don't know whether we need a formal motion or whether it would be something around consensus, but maybe to have something like that as part of committee and reports on a regular basis. We wouldn't necessarily have a report every meeting, but it would give us the opportunity to at least acknowledge those and perhaps invite other comment, so.
Great. Carla, since you have shared this.
Yeah, I appreciate Paul bringing it up, and the only other thing I'd add is I want you to maybe also think of it kind of as in when you put in out a solicitation for applications for a job and you encourage diverse candidates to apply. It's similar to that. It shows our community that we are open to feedback or open to their interpretation of our work. And it says, hey, this is a spot for you to speak up on that, so.
And if I might, one thing I did neglect to mention that I wanted to was, this is very consistent with our recently revised mission and vision statement as well.
Yep.
I mean, this is something that we, as a council, have said is something that we value, and I think this would be a very demonstrable way of showing that, not just saying it.
Great point, good.
Yeah.
Eric, any thoughts on this?
Well, if it is something that, you know, everyone's doing because of the need, to me, the question is just what's the format and what's the right place? Is it primarily going to be an ongoing reporting, update reporting, and maybe it falls under reports? You know, so to me, it's just a matter of, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel here, we just have to find a way to weave it into what we're already doing. We have managers' reports, we have COG regional reports, we could have potentially a standing report, and,
Or opportunity for the report.
Yeah.
You know, we have staff reports on there that not always get filled, but we provide the opportunity and the visibility that there is the opportunity, I think is important. And I agree. I think the report section is probably the ideal place to put
well,
it.
at least it's a starting point.
Yeah. And the other part, for us, for College Township in particular, if you look at the other municipalities, reports are at the end.
Yeah.
Our reports are in the beginning. So I think that's a value, and that kind of goes back to my thing, I'm not really good on College Township following others. We lead. I think we heard that tonight and everything. And so if we can set the standard for this section, I think that's important too. So if we have a consensus, we'll work with staff, and I definitely see maybe a D in reports.
The only thing I'd like to add is to somehow work into there that the public is welcome in that, to bring something forward there as well. Reports to me seems like that's a lot of in-house giving out, and that could be what it is. It could be in-house giving out. But if somebody wanted to bring from the outside in, is that welcome as well?
Are we asking for a mechanism to encourage more of that and make it a more inviting opportunity? Because obviously that opportunity exists under public open discussion. But are we saying that that's inadequate or not appropriate, that we want to have it, we somehow want to add a second public input session specifically designed under that?
Well, in general, I mean, think about it, the public lets us know what they're thinking a lot of times, so it could be beforehand.
If in fact you were thinking more in terms of public open discussion, just generally, one of the things you do, we could somehow craft a bullet, just like we have limited comments, 5 minutes. We could somehow craft an appropriate bullet to incorporate under the open public comment portion of the meeting, in order to provide some highlight to that topic. And I'm not sure, I have a kernel of the
I
thoughts.
think if it's agreeable, I'd like us to
Start
start
with
under the
reports.
reports.
Yeah.
And because, as Paul shared, there's stuff out there that we can get into there immediately, and we can get visibility on and everything like that. And as we always do, if the public wants to speak to us, we're their servants,
I was just gonna say, isn't it the chair's discretion to allow public comment on
absolutely.
any item at any time?
Absolutely.
So it could just become a standard thing, okay, we have, as part of maybe the D item under reports, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Does anybody around the table have anything to report? Does anybody in the public want to speak up?
Exactly, how
I mean, I
the
think
chair
that-
manages the meeting.
I don't know
Which
if
is
that-
why I'm just
from a
asking
protocol standpoint, that
potentially
seems fine.
on that in a very succinct
public-
way.
Public is invited.
Exactly, that's what
Public
I'm
invited
asking
to
for, so that when somebody's
Sure.
wondering if
it
this is
appropriate?
something that they wanna bring, that it's there in writing, that's all.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Thanks, yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Yep, that works, I got it.
You got it? Okay.
Thank you all very much for your consideration of that. That's,
Sure, certainly, thanks for bringing it
I want to
forward. Any other matters? Any other matters?
Or is there going to be a unit vote needed at General Forum Monday night, or was that just, that, I was browsing the agenda, was that just to clarify unit vote procedures?
So,
I'm going to have to be
I'm glad
Sounds
you
like your
brought it
sniffer's
up. I'm glad you brought it up because I forgot to bring it up under exec. At exec, the Harris Township rep made a new agenda item request to add an official vote, quote unquote, official vote on the Whitehall Road Regional Park financing, option number 2 or option number 3. If you will recall, we went through all the committee processes and everything, got to executive committee, and everybody in the world knows that a unanimous vote was required to move anything forward. Being that that was a one-topic special meeting at the holiday season, and the one member had made their intent absolutely clear, we put parameters in at exec that each member municipality would survey their members or discuss at a public meeting whether they would support or not that additional funding. Ferguson did that at their public meeting the Monday before the scheduled special meeting, and as requested, reported to the COG chair that there was it was an absolute no. At that point, the COG chair, in consultation with the executive committee, made the decision to cancel the meeting as moot. Harris has a concern that we're violating process by doing that, because facilities said facilities recommended it, finance recommended it, exec recommended it, but it was conditioned on that there was no reported no votes from the member municipalities, and there absolutely was. And so, again, the discussion of process and everything came into play and everything. So, there is a chance that Harris is going to be bringing forward, so at exec meeting, the motion did not get a second, and therefore died, and therefore could not be added to the January general forum agenda. The Harris rep indicated that he believed that a Harris member would do similar at the general forum. Under the new, and I've already directed that will occur, if that's gonna occur, that occurs under the new agenda item. It will need a second, we'll take a vote, it'll be added to the agenda under other matters, and we'll go from there. My belief is that there is no support for adding that to the agenda, but I just wanted to make you aware that should it come forward, then indeed, we would potentially be pushed into the unit vote.
So that's why that unit vote is in.
I do believe, yes.
May I ask a clarifying
Yes,
question?
sure.
If the motion is made and seconded to add it to the agenda, is that a unit vote or is it a majority vote?
Majority vote.
Okay, so it would not only need to get a second, it would also need to get a majority.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we may never get to the point where there's a unit vote needed
Exactly.
if it fails
Exactly.
on majority.
Oh, just
Okay,
getting on the agenda.
correct. That was my only clarification.
Right.
I wanted to make sure.
Right, and so from previous action, I know we all supported, would support the additional funds, but we can't do it. The majority doesn't make that one needle move. So I just make you aware, vote, second or vote. They need a second from another municipality to even continue the discussion. Again, at exec, it didn't even get a second. And then we will conduct a majority vote and go from there.
Was Harris's concern that you had a staff recommendation, a COG committee recommendation, and no vote was taken?
Yes.
Is that their concern? Is it
Yeah,
more of a
well,
process?
not only that, multiple committees.
Right.
Multiple committees that pushed that forward. I reminded the Harris Township Board that the executive committee is responsible for the agenda of the general forum to include canceling of meetings and everything like that. And specific criteria, this didn't happen in a vacuum. This didn't happen unilaterally as it was put or whatever like that. It was discussed, laid out, all that good kind of stuff. Very public, multiple public meetings and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't move forward. So at this point, unfortunately, I feel to push it forward, this only is intended to accomplish one thing, and I don't think it's beneficial that one thing.
No, and if exec has the ultimate authority over what goes on the agenda, it's kind of trying to do an end around
It is.
the agenda, it seems to me. I'm
No, I
guessing
agree.
here.
But the other thing is you
Well,
don't,
it's
also
their
you also
prerogative.
don't
It's
want
okay.
to ignore precedent. You don't want things that come up through the committee structures and everything. Exec says, well, yeah, I don't want to do that.
It just happens that those chairs that, don't agree with it or something. Yeah.
Right, exactly. You never want to do that.
But
But this was a very specific thing that required a very specific set of circumstances that were not going to be met.
But to Carla's point, that's the power you give exec when
It
you
is.
elect a chair.
Right, but it's also
You get
the
to
individual
accept.
of Harris's
The chair
prerogative
is only
to
one vote.
make that motion,
on the
so.
exec.
Right, but theoretically, they are to represent the wishes, the consensus of their township.
Exactly, and that was a point that I made, but I encouraged if the individual, if they felt that strong, they needed to make that motion, and, and it goes where it goes.
If you can't trust the chair, then the whole house of cards starts to fall apart.
Well, there's a whole other irony piece in that whole thing, but it'll play out the way it plays out. And we'll make the best of it and stuff, but thank you for bringing that, because I did want to give
Yeah.
council a heads up.
10 more minutes.
That it was happening.
But, and not to extend this, but if I may, the four of you, and are all of you planning to attend in person or no?
Yes.
I'll be there.
That's probably a good idea.
I was planning to.
Okay,
So-
but you're not.
I will be 1,000 miles away.
Okay,
So
understood.
point to the manager. Can we say right now what our unit vote is?
No,
No.
I don't think you should do that. I mean,
Okay.
you could have a straw vote at the moment, and it would be indicative of what your vote would be.
But you need the actual.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine, that's fine. We'll
Can't
figure it
vote
out.
on a motion that hasn't been made, is that?
Well, yeah, it's not,
I got you, yeah, I understand your point. Yep, I was just trying to make it as least painful as possible. Oh, by the way, you'll need to oversee that unit vote,
sweet.
so. But we'll get through it, I've already made them aware that I believe that the vast majority of general forum sees the method of the madness in how the cancellation was arrived, and that it was it was discussed multiple times at public meetings and it had the full support of all the chairs and members. So that's a high bar. That's not unilateral. That's not trying to slide something past or something.
Right,
So
yeah.
I think those distinctions are very important. Now, I will say that the example that was thrown out is that Harris should object to every unit vote that comes forward now until we agree to Hessfield restrooms. And put bluntly, I jumped on that with both feet because that's night and day different, what was discussed, so. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. I have nothing else. Anybody else?
1 second, I just wanted to publicly say thank you to council and staff for your hard work, your dedication, and personally your support. So just wanted to say thanks and look forward to working with you in a different capacity here soon.
Mike Bloom extending the meeting.
Hey, that's, what else is new?
Surprise.
On behalf of College Township, its residents, its council, thank you. Yeah,
Much appreciated.
we look forward to working with you in your next chapter and watching you succeed. You better succeed or you're gonna bet we set the standard. Remember, we're gonna go back to that. So, anything else for the good of the cause? Very
We
good.
owe
I'll
you
accept
cake
the
and
motion
ice
to
cream.
adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion, I'll second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.